Yep, and we're live.
Wow, right on time, Mubarak. Great. So why don't I go ahead and get us started? So first, welcome everyone. Thanks for being here today. This is the Fishbowl's virtual finals, so hopefully you're in the right place. I'm Carolyn. I'll be your MC for today's event. A little bit about me. I'm currently dialing in from Boulder, Colorado, where I work for Google on the Google Drive product. I'm super excited to host today's inspiring event. It's going to be our first finals ever. This is the first year of the Fishbowl Challenge, and we've really come out strong with some amazing teams. So we've got some amazing business proposals queued up for the event. But before I go into more detail on house rules and introducing our honored judges and presenters, I'd love to turn it over to Tom Siegel. Tom is one of the co-founders of the Fishbowl Challenge. He's originally from Germany and honed his entrepreneurial spirit at Stanford's Graduate School of Business, where he completed his MBA before joining Google to build out and lead the Google Trust and Safety team. Since leaving Google in 2019, Tom helped found this competition and is currently leading a startup called Trust Lab with the mission to bring trust back to online content. So with that, let me pass it over to Tom and he'll tell you a little bit more about the competition.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. Thank you everybody for joining us for the finals of the Fishbowl Challenge. As many of you know, this is the inaugural year of the challenge and of our organization as well. I'm really grateful for the warm welcome and the support we've received to date, and really look forward to continuing to grow our impact as an organization over the years to come. The world we live in right now is hurting, and there's a lot of pain and fear and anger and terrible suffering in all parts of the world. And it makes me sad and concerned, and I know many of you have similar feelings. But I'm also very hopeful that something really good will come out of all this, and as people will do better and emerge as a stronger society over time. But such progress is not automatic or inevitable, and it happens because there are people who see an opportunity and embrace change, who take action, and who lead in times of need and crisis. And the Fishbowl Challenge was founded to be a launching pad for such young entrepreneurs and activists and dreamers who don't accept the status quo. College-age students from around the world who commit their minds and hearts, energy, and time to some of the really hard social and environmental problems. And our first cohort of 100 students rose to this challenge with proposals to address issues in education, nutrition, energy across many parts of the world. And they really deserve our respect and admiration and full support. And further, we founded Fishbowl Challenge on the belief that it will take global collaboration to solve these incredibly hard problems that the world is facing. Here as well, the first cohort really exceeded our expectations. We received 400 applications from 48 countries in a time when there are really valid questions being asked about race and bias and globalism and inequality. We want to send a signal that working together across continents and cultures and socioeconomic backgrounds to solve big problems is not just possible, but will lead to better results and outcomes. It in the process prepares these students for a world where these skills will be increasingly important for individual and societal success. Today, you'll hear from our 4 finalist teams that have made it through 2 rounds of eliminations. There are 18 inspiring entrepreneurs who join us from 12 different countries and will be sharing their plans for new social ventures with us. We have an accomplished group of senior executives who will be determining how to best allocate the $50,000 in prize money. The entrepreneurs, investors, and senior executives from some of the leading organizations across the world. And a really big thank you to them for joining us and sharing their expertise with the participants today. I do not envy them for their task of picking the winners here. So without further ado, I hand it off. I'm back to Carolyn, who's our wonderful MC for this event today, to walk us through the day's plan.
Great, thanks, Tom. I think that was a good overview and kickoff. So let me start with just a few quick house rules. So first, just a friendly reminder to please respect the time limits we've set. That's 20 minutes for presentations and 20 minutes for questions. This is crucial not just to keep our whole event on track, but also to respect the time needed for the other participants. So thank you. Second, speaking of time, heads up that during presentations, we will be prompting the presenters using our moderator function when they have 2 minutes left and 30 minutes left. So keep an eye out in the comment section for those time reminders. You should also try to mute and unmute yourself based off of when you are talking or not talking. Muting yourself when you're not talking is really helpful to reduce ambient noise so that whoever is talking can be heard as crisply and clearly as possible. And since we're doing a virtual final, in case anybody has bandwidth issues, just a pro tip is to turn off your video and just have audio function if you're having any kind of bandwidth issues. It helps to really refocus that energy. Okay, that's it for house rules, pretty easy. So allow me the pleasure of moving on to introducing our judges. I'd like to start with our first judge, Anya Harmeyer. She's a venture capitalist and neuroscientist at Pure OS BioVentures. Prior to this, Anya was investment director at the Roche Venture Fund. I'd love to pass it over to Anya to say a few more words about herself.
Yeah, thank you, Carolyn. And thank you also for allowing me to join. It's really a pleasure to be part of the first Fishbowl Challenge. And just a few words about myself again. So for many years, I was a scientist, entrepreneur, and also a drug developer at Roche. And for the last 4 years, I'm investing in biotech companies focusing mainly on therapeutics. And I'm very passionate about problem solving and connecting people and being there using my creativity to really build and create and support new opportunities. And in my spare time, of course, I also not only work, I'm very interested and excited about learning more about new cultures, about the food, especially also that's connected to it. And to recharge, I love spending time in, on, or underneath water. And really looking through the presentations that we got, I'm really very excited to finally meet the teams who are behind those ambitious ideas and projects. So also congratulations really on the picks. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Anya. That was wonderful. I also like scuba diving, so. All right, I'd love to introduce our next judge, Dhiren Bhatia, who's an entrepreneur and angel investor. Dhiren founded Vuix, a healthcare analytics business, and has led it through growth and acquisition. So let me pass it over to Dhiren to tell us more about himself.
Thanks, Carolyn. And thank you again, everyone, for having me. I'm really excited to be part of the first Fishbowl Challenge as well. And I've had a chance to look at some of the presentations. I'm really looking forward to the day. So yeah, as far as my background, I'm an engineer by training, and I really love working on business problems that are centered around data. So that was kind of the company that we founded, Vuix, which was focused on the healthcare space. So we did analytics for healthcare. So founded the company at my dining room table. So kind of have been in your shoes for some of the contestants today, and then led it through multiple rounds of financing, and then eventually acquisition by Roche. Incidentally, our first judge who was at Roche as well. So yeah, right now I'm focusing my energies on making some angel investments and evaluating other interesting business problems that I want to focus on. And also on my golf game, which I've realized that I'm not going to become a professional golfer anytime soon, so I should get back to data and analytics. So really looking forward to today, and thank you for having me.
Thanks so much, Dhiren. Okay, great. I'd love to move to our next judge, Lindsay Handler. She's passionate about building social enterprises, and until recently was CEO of Phoenix International, an energy company based in Uganda. Lindsay, I'll pass it over to you. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Great. Thank you, Carolyn. First, thank you to the organizers of the Fishbowl Challenge. As Tom said, these are very difficult times. And I think that there's these times are also really important for entrepreneurs to take their ideas and bring them to life to create societal change. So I couldn't be happier to be a part of this competition, and just want to say congratulations to all of the participants. I've been reviewing your presentations and I am really impressed and excited for the competition today. A brief bit of background is I started my career, I had the opportunity to go to Tanzania when I was still an undergrad, like many of you. And I went there thinking I was interested in development, and came away saying, there was so many entrepreneurs in Africa and so many entrepreneurial activities. And at that time, became very passionate about spending my career supporting entrepreneurs, investing in entrepreneurs, and taking a stab at starting my own businesses in Africa. I spent the next 6 years investing in entrepreneurs at the last mile, building micro enterprises with a group called Village Enterprise Fund, and many of them were agricultural based. So I was excited to see some of the businesses here today interested in that. And then after 6 years of investing, I said that I wanted to try and start a business of my own. So in 2009, I was living in a very rural part of Kenya, and our neighbors both lost their homes to a kerosene fire. And one of my neighbors lost a child. And it was that moment that I said, why don't people have access to clean energy? And so we started a journey, which led to Phoenix International, of which I was the CEO. And we started a small business in Uganda. And over 10 years, we grew it into 6 countries across the continent. And we then sold it to NG. And I helped them through that for a little bit. And now I'm taking a sabbatical to figure out what's next. So I'm very excited to be inspired by all of these ideas today and happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Yeah, I think your expertise is going to be, very apropos to some of our contestants' ideas. So I'd love to introduce Ralph Herberleach. He's currently SVP of Artificial Intelligence and Data Science at Zalando. Prior to this, he led technology teams at both Amazon and Facebook. So I'll pass it over to you, Ralph, to tell us more.
Hi, thanks a lot for the intro, but also thanks a lot for being part of this event. We're very honored. Pity we can't have it in Berlin, but we'll do that in some other year. I am based pretty close to Berlin. By training, I'm a statistician, and I developed into a person that used this skill for the application of statistics in AI or machine learning generally. And I've done this for the past 20 years, often at the boundary of existing fields. So one of the ones that I am particularly passionate about for a long time of my career was gaming. So I worked on AI for games, for racing games, but also the application to connect people on online games. So ranking and matchmaking systems that are used in online services. That was pretty exciting. Generally, as I said on my LinkedIn page, I want to see science being used to have a positive impact on people's lives. Gaming is an activity, but one of the projects that I recently did, very related, I really look forward to this presentation, is to judge the food quality using visual sensors and leading to less waste, because it's still an extraordinary amount of waste that happens in food. So I'm really happy to see that we work on this. In my spare time, I like generally long distance running and walking. So for hobby or for relaxation, I would run a half marathon. That's not atypical. And last year I took also a sabbatical, and I used it to fulfill one of my bucket list items. And I walked the Camino de Santiago, which is a pilgrimage that leads you through all of Spain. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ralph. I'm jealous that you enjoy running for fun. It kind of has the opposite effect on me, a little less relaxation. So thank you so much to all of our judges for being here today and dedicating your time to this competition with all of your rich experience, and really appreciate those warm welcomes. So without further ado, I'd love to jump into the final presentations themselves, the meat and the most exciting part of our day today. So we've got 4 amazing finals teams representing 12 different countries. This competition started with, and I know Tom said this, but I think it's worth emphasizing, over 400 applications. And today we have just 18 of those finalists here today. So bravo to our competitors, regardless of the outcome of the final. What you've achieved being here today is really impressive. So thank you. Our judges will be evaluating the contestants across the following criteria. First, the business and market opportunity, the team's plan to operationalize it, the social impact anticipated from the proposal, and finally, the experience and strength of the founding team itself. The judges have $50,000 US to allocate across any of the teams today. So competitors could be vying for being awarded the entire $50,000 or a subset of it. Please join me in wishing all of the teams a lot of luck. So without further hesitation, let me welcome our first finalists for their presentation. As a reminder, after I introduce them, they will get 20 minutes for their presentation, and then judges will get 20 minutes for questions. So first, we have After Energy, which is a team addressing the problem of high fish feed costs and unsustainable waste management in Ghana. Their solution is a bio-waste treatment facility that would transform organic waste into fish feed. But I will say no more and pass it to the team. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. We hope you're doing well. We're After Energy. Now, before I start, I would like to ask you, what if you could transform waste into protein? We at After Energy are working to make this a reality. Our mission is to leverage on the power of insects to transform nearly any kind of organic waste into two main products: protein feed for animals and fertilizer. Now, Collins will elaborate more on the problem we are tackling.
Thank you very much. Fish comprises 60% of a Ghanaian protein diet. At a population of over 31 million, Ghana's annual fish consumption currently stands at about 1 million metric tons. With an annual production capacity of just 400,000 tons, Ghana imports over $200 million worth of fish every year. Today, Ghana imports over 60% of the fish it consumes. And the obvious solution to fixing this trend is fish farming. However, the lack of access to high quality and competitively priced feed is one of the main constraints on the growth of aquaculture in Ghana. Fish farmers across the country complain that commercial feed accounts for an estimated 70% of their production cost. Now, it turns out that so far, the most expensive ingredient in the fabrication of these feeds is the fish meal, which is essential because of its high protein profile that meets the nutritional requirements of the farmed fish. And that gives birth to a question: how do you obtain a cheaper but yet high quality alternative to fish meal? Now, 90% of the fish we use for fish meal could actually be used to feed humans instead. So this has raised lots of concerns on our food system's resilience to climate change and malnutrition related to global catch declines. So this proves not to be a sustainable approach. However, on the other hand, Ghana generates about 12,000 tons of waste per day, 61% of which is organic waste, such as food waste, market waste, and agro-industrial waste from food processing. So this accounts for about 3 million tons of waste per year. Now, to put that into perspective, this is about 4 times the size of the amount of fish consumed on a yearly basis. Now, the big question is, what if you could transform this enormous organic waste into a local, eco-friendly, high quality, and cheap protein source?
Next slide, please. Next slide. After Energy's solution is to grow, harvest, and process black soldier fly larvae to produce fish feed and fertilizer. No, back. The black soldier fly is a non-pest insect that can devour a widespread scope of organic material ranging from fruits and vegetables to animal remains and manure. By implementing the principles of the circular economy, we recycle food waste from restaurants, breweries, and market center into organic material for BSF larvae production. The BSF larvae are then harvested and sold to feed millers at a low cost, sustainable, high-quality protein alternative to environmentally unsustainable fish meal. The black soldier fly larvae has a high waste-to-biomass conversion rate of up to 25% and is able to reduce waste up to 80%. making it a novel approach of biomass conversion. In a year per meter squared, a BSF farm can feed approximately 9,000 kilograms of organic waste to 6 million 5-day-old larvae and produce 700 kilograms of larvae for fish feeds and 1,800 kilograms of frass referring to the residue left behind by the larvae after treatment. The revenue per meter squared in a year is approximately $6,800 per kilogram of larvae and $3,900 per kilogram of frass. The frass would be utilized for agronomic purposes. Over a year, the same BSF farm will result in 15 tons of carbon dioxide presented from being released. Go back to slide 4, please. This is equivalent to removing 4 average cars, slide 4, from the streets for a year. This proves that compared to other livestock raised as sources of protein feed, black soldier fly larvae require a fraction of the space and emission-producing resources to grow. All in all, our goal is to make BSF larvae a well-known, affordable protein source for animal feed manufacturers. Next slide. Our team is composed of outstanding students from 5 different countries in 3 continents, being Africa, America, and Europe. This gives After Energy the unique ability to understand and approach problems in a way that takes into account many different perspectives, yielding solutions that are holistic. Our members are Lawrence, who is our team's expert in business management and marketing. Next is me, Namitso, a researcher and emerging expert in renewable energy and biocomposite materials. Next is Collins, who won the Wedger Prize 2019 with his project, which consists of a design for a circular economy for cocoa bean production, followed by Dennis, an award-winning young entrepreneur who's passionate about global challenges. Last but not least, we have Lizzie, who has experience working with engineering design teams, and through her previous co-op work term, she gained project management skills that she has applied in our team. All these skills and experiences have equipped us with the necessary tools to provide the best solutions to any problem we encounter. And this project is very dear to our hearts because of the impact it has on so many levels, including on the health of our oceans, climate change, contamination of water resources, food system resilience, and the health of many communities. Next to our milestones.
Slide 17, please. We are currently working on our prototype with the objective of testing different larvae growing parameters and larvae response to varying waste compositions. This will also help us to determine the right conditions to reduce the life cycle of the fly by at least 5%. We're aiming to complete these objectives by July 2020. By December 2020, After Energy will have the pilot facility constructed and start operations. We have allowed a 5-month period from the prototype completion to the pilot facility start of operations to account for any delays related to land agreement logistics and COVID-19. In the pilot facility, we will continue running experiments for process improvements to facilitate the transition into commercial scale operations. The testing period will last 6 months after the start of operations, with June 2021 as the target date for completion. In September 2021, 9 months after the start of operations, After Energy will increase the kilograms of waste processed, which will result in 3 times more waste treated and 3 times more kilograms of larvae and residue produced. In March 2022, more than a year after starting operations in the pilot facility, we will further increase the waste treatment capacity of the pilot facility to approximately 2 tons of waste per day, which is about 6.5 times more waste treated than at the start of the pilot facility. Now let's talk about our supply chain.
Efficiency for pre-processing. Manufacturing is basically where everything happens, growing the larvae and processing the larvae residue into fertilizers. After which finished products such as larvae eggs, and fertilizers will be distributed to wholesalers across the country and to fish farmers as well. Now, Lawrence would walk you through the budget and how profitable our business is. Next slide.
In July 2020, from the $50,000 in prize money, $23,400 will go directly towards the construction and land costs of the facility, office, and storage building. Around $18,400 goes to construction costs, and the remaining $5,000 goes to land costs. The construction timeline will be around 3 to 5 months. By August 2020, we will then spend $21,300 towards equipment and machinery. Around $14,000 goes to the treatment building for items such as, but not limited to, conversion crates, pallets, shredder, and high-pressure cleaner. $6,800 goes to the nursery and storage building, such as, but not limited to, pupation crates, collection container, and working table. The remaining $5,300 will be allocated for unforeseen expenses and for the expansion of the facility. Most of these equipment and machinery will be purchased from a hardware store and will be made by a carpenter in Ghana, while the rest of the items will be purchased through an online marketplace called Jumia. The delivery time of the items purchased through Jumia can take around 2 to 4 weeks, while items made by the carpenter can take around 2 weeks. The delivery cost for items from Jumia and the carpenter in Ghana will be $500. We expect all of the items to be delivered to the facility by the first or second week of October 2020. Slide 20, please. In the first year, our operational costs will be $25,000. The fixed costs consist of utilities such as electricity and water, and depreciation costs. And our variable costs consist of labor, consumables, and procurement of waste and distribution costs. The retail price per kilogram of BSF larvae is $1.99, with a production cost of 86 cents per unit. This retail price is cheaper than most competitors' fish feed retail price, which is on average $4.99 per kilogram of fish feed. The product will be distributed through tricycles, which can carry around 350 kilograms and can cost $17 per trip per day. At the end of the year, After Energy will produce 10 tons of larvae for the whole year and will receive $35,400 in revenues with a profit margin of 29%, which is around $10,300. Slide 21, please. In the second year, we will be increasing operations, which will require purchasing more equipment and investment of $32,000. This will be accomplished through raising funds from potential investors and competitions, as well as reinvesting our profits within the course of the first year of operations. In the second year, the operation costs will increase to $35,000, and our revenue will also increase to $54,500 with a profit margin of 36%. Slide 22, please. After Energy's strengths that will help it succeed include a diverse team, research knowledge, and support from EWAG. However, strengths are valuable, but it is also important to realize the weaknesses that we must address. These weaknesses include lack of technical knowledge, establishing a reputation or brand. Because our brand is relatively new and local, there is no brand loyalty. This will change with increased marketing locally as well as exhibitions. Our strengths will help us capitalize on emerging opportunities. These opportunities include few competition and location, and subsequently a huge market, as well as connections. However, research has shown that a number of startups are beginning to increase in the fish feed production field. Therefore, there is a threat of emerging and big competitors. There is also a likelihood of customers resisting to accept our product and brand. Now Dennis will walk you through the partnerships.
Over the past few months, After Energy secured a lot of partnership deals with potential buyers of our larvae, business partners, and a consulting firm. West African Feed is a BSF pilot facility in Ghana that has been operating for over a year now. They agreed to partner with us to provide their technical knowledge on how to run a BSF facility successfully. As part of our partnership, we will use a portion of their facility to run our prototype to improve the conditions of the larvae. And also, They will connect us with their waste producers such as cocoa-cane, Guinness Ghana breweries to help provide us with a constant supply of homogeneous waste. Next slide, please. Novi Farms is an aquaculture business in Ghana located along the Volta River that has agreed to partner with us in testing of our product on their fishes. The farm also agreed to buy our products since they complained that imported feed cost them over $2,600 for every cycle. After Energy also has a close tie with the project coordinator of AWAC, a pilot facility in Indonesia established in 2013 for the purpose of obtaining mentorship on nursing and wearing of BSF, among other aspects. Additionally, After Energy also established a strong relationship with Platinum Africa Solutions. The consulting firm helps provide effective business solutions such as business planning, partnerships, marketing, impact assessment, and organizational performance auditing for early stage startups. Pisces Farms is also another aquaculture startup we reached out to, and they agreed to purchase our product once we're operating. Now, the big question is, why now? Next slide, please.
Right, the aquaculture market in Ghana is an estimated $200 million industry and rapidly growing. So this is a very attractive market for investors. But the problem with most business models is that they are under an extractive system. That is the mining or overfishing of wild fish to be processed to fish meal and fish oil. This practice is consequently killing the ecosystem of our oceans. However, we consider our approach to this problem to be not only sustainable, but also regenerative. That is, with every net dollar made, there is a positive impact on the environment. We are tackling this problem by also addressing a huge environmental struggle with the disposal of organic waste. Hence, we are saving both our oceans and our land. Within our first year of operation, we would have converted about 112 tons of organic waste into over 10 tons of dried lava meal, which are then distributed to our customers. Through our robust supply chain system, we are able to create local jobs for the human capital involved in the procurement, production, and distribution phase of our process. With our supply of a better and cheaper alternative to fish meal to the local farmers, we are able to help them drastically cut down their production costs while consequently increasing their income. With our team of partners, advisors, and staff, we'll be expanding our production capacity by over 6 times by 2022. And so we are strongly motivated by the impact of this project, its capacity to contribute towards food security, reduce environmental pollution, and contribute towards conservation of environmental biodiversity. Today, the high cost of feed is pushing thousands of Ghanaian fish farmers out of business. And the solution to this problem is not far away. In fact, it is also a solution to another problem that is much closer to us. The solution is in our environment. And over the past 8 months, we have been able to develop relationships with key partners and stakeholders that will help us bring our solution to reality. And now, with your investment and our model, we'll be able to collectively and directly advance 4 of the 17 United Nations Sustainability Development Goals for the creation of a socially, economically, and environmentally prosperous community. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much to the team. That was really well done and really inspiring. I'd love to pass it to the judges. You have 20 minutes to ask questions.
Yes, maybe I can start. Thank you so much, After Energy, for your presentation. That was really great to hear the voiceover and your vision to the slides. I have a question more from the product itself. So I know fish farming, there's also, of course, always a lot of antibiotics used and you have a lot of waste generated, but also you have to have a certain quality of your product, of your food to have a certain yield of fish that you can harvest. So how do you want to go about quality control and maybe additional nutritions or antibiotics or something that has to be used in this farming?
Thank you for your question. So we will start by partnering with one of the fish feed buyers. So then we will be testing the larvae with them to make sure that it meets the requirements, the protein contents. And initially, we will be focusing on making the larvae. We won't be focusing on doing the fish feed like right away, since we are planning on specializing on having a good larvae product in the manufacturing process. And then as we go in the research stage, we will be researching on how to make it a good fish feed. But it starts off as the larvae product.
So I have a question thanks a lot for the presentation on the operationalization side. So a lot of the cost structure right now seems to be focused on the facility where you produce it. But what I didn't get much clarity is what kind of distances do you have to cover between the waste production and the larvae facility? And what's the average cost per mile to cover that? Because that's going to become part of your variable cost. And I didn't get a clear picture there. I don't really have a sense for what the topology looks like, where your product is needed and where your product is produced.
So yeah, about that, I really won't be able to be like, talk in kilometers, but we have like tricycles here in Ghana, and it could cost you about $17 to transport like an organic waste to the facility, depending on where our facility will be constructed. But it's not really like a lot. So I don't know if that answers your question. But
yeah, the $17 answers the question of the cost, but I don't know if that's going to cover a distance of 100 miles or the mental model I have is that your addressable market is a certain physical distance away from the larvae facility. And so how big is that radius? That I get a sense for what's the addressable market that you actually have, given you have transportation costs to cover.
It takes about like an hour to from the waste producers to our facility. So I can talk in like hours and time, but we don't use I'm not very good with the kilometers. And
okay, thanks. That's helpful. An hour, I assume that's helpful. Thank you. That's kind of answering it. I can translate that.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you for that presentation. I have a question similar to Ralph's. When I looked at how you wanted to use the prize money, I see a significant amount of the capital as well as the time going into building a facility and buying land. And in my experience, that is very complicated and can lead to incredible delays, which pushes off the ability to test this product. And so my question is, have you looked at renting an existing facility to, get your production, get your product, test product market fit? And if so, why have you chosen to buy and build a facility?
Okay, so about that, yes, we talking about renting a facility. That could be, we actually gave it a thought, but it could be like a little bit of a problem because we might not have that the kind of facility we are looking for. And then also looking at where we want to have start our project, we cannot get like a facility around that side that looks like exactly what we want, or how, you know, facilities have to have a lot of like aeration. It has to have a lot of we have to also factor the distance from waste producers to the facility. So we could get a facility to rent, you know, but it could not be where we want to have our facility or our project started. So that is why we thought of more like building our own facility for the project. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, so I'm hearing you have an aeration need, which is a technical need, but then there's a location need. Yeah, I think that answers my question. I think understanding whether you have very high gross margins right now. I think you're at about 57% gross margins and then 30% profit margins. So it does feel to me there might be some room there to, you know, to look at having it a little bit farther away if it helps you get going. So I think that's the part of the business that I would want to understand a little bit more. And if there is a possibility to start with an existing facility and look to building your own in the future.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
That's a good job, After Energy. I have a question on the operations side as well, specifically around scaling. So I didn't quite get a sense for the speed of the conversion using this method, and as you start to scale the business, how does that factor in? You know, how fast is it to create the food using your method? And you know, obviously you could add larger and larger facilities as you need to scale, but does that then become cost prohibitive? So I just want to get a sense of how you scale this business and compared to other methods.
So currently, thank you for your question. So we will be building the facility to the size that we want it to be after the second year. So like in the first year, we won't be starting off like with the scale that we want it to be. We will be starting at a smaller scale, and then we will be increasing like incrementally throughout the year. And then after that, like, and how we increase is not like by building more or like expanding the facility, but by buying more equipment. And the good thing about BSF larvae is that you can stack them up in crates. Like it's not like horizontal growing, it would be vertical growing. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, so you're not concerned about the speed of, for example, like the 9,000 kilograms converting into 700 kg of meal for the fish. How long does that take? And you don't think that, what I'm hearing is you don't think that's going to be a bottleneck in your supply chain. Is that right?
Could you like clarify, like you mean that the speed of conversion wouldn't be a bottleneck?
Yeah, I'm asking if you think it would be a bottleneck at scale, as you need to process, you know, hundreds of thousands of kilograms of the raw material that converts into the feed.
So we will be having so the larvae growing time takes 12 days. So first we have the eggs, then they become 5-day-old larvae. So it takes 5 days for them to reach this stage. And then after that, it takes 12 days for them to grow into the size that we want to market it. And we have made we're gonna make a system in which we have like 3 batches going on at the same time. And then as we increase operations, and it's gonna increase, but for starters, like for it to be easy to explain, for example, in a month, instead of having just one cycle, like waiting for the whole cycle to happen, we're gonna have 3 cycles happening at the same time. So time wouldn't be really a constraint. It would be like you can manage it by doing like simultaneous batches.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
In your presentation, you also mentioned some competitors and that there are also other ways that are currently established. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that. So what will be the competition? Will it be also from a financial, so from a per kilogram price base? Will it be a very similar approach in terms of generation of the product? Or what is it that is truly your competition?
Well, in regards to the competition, we have checked across. We have checked a lot of across Ghana. There are a lot of other startups that are also into black soldier fly larvae and production. But what we noticed is that most of these startups are actually, their production actually depends on the climatic condition where they are. So their process is a little bit different from what we are proposing. Our system will be actually done by controlling the abiotic conditions of the larva, that is growing them under a controlled system of controlling the temperature, humidity, the moisture content of the substrates that's going to be fed on it, and several other factors, light intensities. And so the competitions we're going to be facing might be perhaps in times the experience they already have and the fact that they have been there for quite some time. And that is something we are trying to tackle by actually collaborating or partnering with an already existing facility that is already in Ghana, that is the West African Feeds. They've been there for like a year now, and they have already established a brand, and they're well known already in the area. So our partnership with them is going to help us to easily enter into the market, because we'll be having more like a co-branding and partnership with the products we're going to be making. So that's going to help us to offset the competition we will be facing within the year.
Okay, so to add to that, the market is really huge, and there is like a really huge demand. We're not targeting to compete with other companies. We're just moving for collaboration, since the goal is to address expensive fish feed and the need for sustainable food waste management. So we are not actually looking to chase anybody out, because it's like at the end of the day, we're all looking for the same thing, solving a huge problem, a huge market.
Yeah, so a follow-up question to that is, do you see yourself primarily as a B2B business? Are you looking to, is your main customer partners like West African Feeds, who are going to then sell it on to the end customer, or are you considering going B2C as well?
We are actually B2C. WAF is focused on, WAF is also B2C, but they focus on reptiles and other customers. We focus on fish. So we work side by side with different markets.
Okay, so you are looking to go B2C. So are you going to be selling kind of through other types of distributors? Are you going to be setting up your own retail outlets?
No, WAF will help us set up the distribution channel. What they just ask from us is to help with the production side, because they have so much demand. And what we're helping them is offering an additional capacity, and then we'll help each other. They'll help us mostly sell the product.
I have a question on the product side. So with this alternative feed, does that change the gradation of the human grade fish? Well, once the fish consumes this feed, does that change how that fish is graded for human consumption?
Thank you for your question. Actually, there is no, a lot of studies have been done on black soldier fly being used to replace fish feed, and because it's an emerging market and a lot of people are very much interested in it. and there have been tests that have been done, and there's actually no negative effect of replacing up to about 48% of the normal feed of the normal fish feed with black soldier fly larvae. In fact, at an optimum 25%. Oh my God, I think I locked this.
We can still hear you.
I think that's fine. I think I got my answer. Doesn't sound like it changes the gradation. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I think we have time for one more question, if judges have any last question.
I have one that's, for me, this is an area I'm not familiar with. So that's probably more for education, but also helpful for understanding a proposal. So often in supply chains, you have to deal with some form of seasonality and variation. So demand maybe it's very high within a end of the week and very lower at the beginning of the week. So these larvae, how much can they be stored? And because they're, this is a type of food that is a living organism that develops in a relatively short cycle, as you said, from 5 days to 12 days. So if there is a decreased interest in demand, how much can you buffer the supply for an extra week, or will the food, the fish feed, actually go bad? Do you have to freeze it? Do you have to cool it to keep it? That's kind of my question.
Repeat your question, please.
So the larvae, how long, if it doesn't get consumed as food, how long will it last before it develops further into a fly and actually be not food anymore? How long can you store it if the demand for a kilogram of it or several tens of kilograms is currently not there because there isn't some fish, there's variation in the demand. So how quickly does it have to be consumed before it goes bad, the product?
Oh, okay. Once we've achieved, once we've gotten the black soldier fly larvae, what we can do is we dry it for storage. So there's no need to worry about turning into a fly. So once we've achieved the larvae, we dewater it, dry it, or you can freeze.
Additionally, to add to the trend of the market is not like more seasonal, because we're like targeting like 3 markets currently. So we're targeting like fish farmers, and fish is like a daily consumable product. Like every day people are consuming. People keep buying our product. Aside of targeting fish feed producing companies. So I reached out to a fish feed producing company, and they actually wanted to move from fish meal to larvae, but they said they would want to test our product to know if it fits with what they're looking for before they choose to, purchase our product. So I feel like there is a lot of market for it. We have like poultry, we have fish feed producers, we have fish farmers. So the market is like more stable. It's not like more seasonal.
Also, just wanted to add to that. So after drying it, another way to make it last longer is by removing the fat, and also the fat can be used, it can be like commercialized as another product. And the shelf life, it can be of about 12 months. Thank you so much. Any other questions?
I think we're actually at time. So congratulations After Energy on your presentation and Q&A. Thank you so much. I'd like to introduce actually our next team. So we'll pull up that presentation again. Thank you, judges, for all the good questions as well. Our next team is Scopei. They have identified the need for a low-cost way to diagnose speech disorders in developed countries. Their solution is a modern and affordable diagnostic equipment design for improved diagnosis in patients. So with that, allow me to pass it to the Scopei team. You have 20 minutes. Thanks.
Alrighty, can everyone hear me? Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to present our project Scopei to you today. My name is Matthew, and I'm a doctor and previous medtech company co-founder from Australia. We also have Anna with us today, a mechanical engineer from Stanford with experience in management and consulting, and Daniel from UC Berkeley's Haas School of Business with experience in economics and pharmaceutical research. We're really excited about the potential for Scopei to create tangible social impact in the treatment of millions of people with speech disorders worldwide every year with our affordable, reliable, and portable nasal endoscope. So on to the next slide, please. Speech is an essential part of the human experience. However, 220 million children are affected with speech disorders due to a wide range of causes. These causes can be split into two main buckets: anatomical or structural causes, things like cleft or enlarged tonsils, and also other causes, things like genetic disorders and traumatic brain injury. As mentioned before, one of these key causes is cleft. This is a birth defect that causes incomplete closure of the lip, the palate or roof of the mouth, or both of these together. And this impedes resonance of vocal sounds inside the mouth and throat and affects more than 500 live births per day. Thinking of some famous people with cleft, firstly, Joaquin Phoenix, who recently portrayed the Joker, and also Jesse Jackson. But if these people can be so successful and among some of the best orators in the world, what's the problem? The key difference here is the diagnosis and treatment of their speech disorder. So on to the next slide, which outlines the typical process for diagnosis and treatment. At the age of 3, investigation is usually performed by an ear, nose, and throat surgeon, or ENT surgeon, to determine the severity and management options available. The gold standard method is with nasoendoscopy. In the words of an ENT surgeon, a nasoendoscope is as essential as a stethoscope. This is a procedure where a camera mounted on the end of a tube is inserted up the nose to allow the operator to visualize the roof of the mouth and the throat. This is a procedure that's done while the patient's awake and while the patient's talking. And if there's a defect, the size and the shape is assessed. This is very commonly used, not only for the assessment of speech disorders, but also conditions from tonsil and swallowing assessments to throat cancers in adults. And it's used by some other medical specialties, from sleep medicine to neurosurgery. In fact, 20 million endoscope-related procedures are performed every year in the US alone. Depending on the results for cleft patients, a choice is made between surgical management or conservative management involving speech therapy. And this is the best age to have the surgery to minimize potential adverse effects and before any major developmental impact. Once this decision about whether or not to the surgery has been made, ongoing monitoring of the palate is performed with repeat nasoendoscopies after the surgery, or in the case of the conservative management, after speech therapy. There is an alternative diagnostic method using radiology, like an X-ray, which unfortunately exposes children to unnecessary radiation, and the equipment for this is not very widely available. So on to the next slide. The ramifications of the management decision for speech disorders are extremely important, as they determine the trajectory of improvement for children with speech disorders during very important developmental phases. For example, if treated well, cleft can have minimal impact, as we see with the case of Joaquin Phoenix, with no significant long-term impact on his speech. However, for many children with speech disorders, the lack of access to appropriate testing and poor management choices can affect the patient's speech for the rest of their lives, in turn affecting their communication, relationship building, education, and many other areas of life. According to the research, roughly $50,000 is lost in economic value per cleft patient who needs surgery but did not receive it. And on the converse, it's also important to consider the significant risks of performing unnecessary surgical procedures based on a poor assessment. Only 12% of cleft clinics in developing countries have access to a nasoendoscope, and an even smaller percentage of general ENT clinics, meaning that the clear majority of patients attending those clinics do not have access to the most useful diagnostic and monitoring test for speech disorders. Take El Salvador, for example, a country of 6.5 million people, which has just 3 nasoendoscopes in the entire country. Why? Because the cost of equipment is so prohibitively expensive, and so clinics often have to use makeshift rudimentary examinations using subjective assessment of speech tone or trying to visualize the palate by placing a mirror under the nose to get a view of the palate there, to diagnose the cause of the speech disorder and decide on management. So for the next slide, please. So why is this even more of a problem now? Firstly, there is increasing visibility and attention towards cleanliness of medical equipment in light of contamination incidents with nasoendoscopes in the media, which have led to wrongful deaths and other legal concerns. In my own personal experience as a doctor, I've seen contamination incidents where dirty scopes have been accidentally used on patients, in some cases causing really significant medical harm. Current nasoendoscopes take significant time to clean, and Scopei aims to address this issue by aiming to be the first single-use nasoendoscope, reducing this risk to 0. Furthermore, global nasoendoscopy numbers are expected to increase. Not only are there more children born with cleft, but also as disposable income worldwide increases, people demand better levels of care. The charity Smile Train, which works globally to improve cleft care through funding of specialized clinics and provision of 50% of cleft surgeries in the developing world, they're leading best practice in these countries. And they are now mandating the need for a post-operative nasoendoscopy procedure, opening up further the need for its clinics to have the necessary equipment to conduct this sort of monitoring. So we aim for Scopei to tackle this rising need for nasoendoscopies, initially targeting cleft at launch, but extending to investigation of a wider range of conditions. So I'm going to hand over to Daniel now.
Sure. Next slide, please. So current existing nasoendoscopes are scary, bulky, and unreasonably expensive. That's why we're introducing Scopei, our solution to providing a better, more comfortable nasoendoscopy for patients that increases accessibility by lowering costs for clinics around the world. So next slide. Let's take a look at a competitive product analysis of existing nasoendoscopes and how they compare to Scopei's features. First are the current market leader on the left of chip and tip nasoendoscopes. As you see, they require these massive towers that make them impossible to move between patients. As a result, they remain stationary in a room and add to the hospital's logistical problems of scheduling a nasoendoscopy. Their massive size is matched only by their hefty price point of $60,000 to $100,000 US, making them an unimaginable purchase for most clinics in the developing world. A commonly voiced complaint among doctors is the complicated software attached to the device that requires multiple trainings to learn. The handle of the scope is heavy and difficult to maneuver, causing less efficient procedures and a higher amount of patient nosebleeds. Despite the amount of unnecessary technology built into the scope, they lack the highly demanded ability of recording an endoscopy for surgeons to reference in the future. Scopei team has witnessed multiple occasions where nurses were forced to stand recording the chip and tip screens with their own iPhones. Next are fiber optic nasoendoscopes, which although more portable are extremely fragile and suffer low image quality and lost pixelation by the time they reach overseas clinics. The scope requires long sterilization times and its structure inhibits lower diameter scopes, making them a more painful experience for pediatric patients. Its metallic and rigid finish makes it look more like a weapon than an assistive tool. Now you may think appearance doesn't matter, but a nasal endoscopy requires a lot of collaboration with the patient. Crying makes it impossible for proper diagnosis due to the mucus, movement, and inability to speak normally when measuring resonance in a patient's voice. Finally, as the challenger that questions the status quo of nasoendoscopes, it's our Scopei. Its affordable split price points, which I'll explain in upcoming slides, allows us to meet the needs of clinics located all around the world. It's really good at the things doctors want out of a nasal endoscope. Its ability to record procedures garners the advantages of rising telehealth. Now patients located in impoverished countries that lack ENTs will be able to benefit from the diagnosis of the best expert overseas. Scopei is the most pediatric-friendly device, not only due to appearance, but because it has the thinnest diameter scope currently on market. Our provisional design patent is for an innovative ergonomic grip that increases hand-eye coordination for less training, less pain, and quicker procedures. Next slide, please. So now to expand onto our pricing model. Based on the country of sale, Scopei is sold as either reusable or single use, with the word use referring to the sterilization needs of the scope. On the left is the reusable Scopei, which, similar to existing endoscopes, is sterilized after every procedure by bathing it in a chemical solution for 20 minutes. Purchasing sterilization solutions, such as ethyl oxide, will cost the clinic around $5 per procedure. By setting a $2,000 price point, which is little as 2% of competitor prices, reusable Scopei offers a 50% profit margin. On the right, we have single-use Scopei. Here, a clinic buys Scopei in two parts, the body and sterile pre-packaged tips. After a doctor performs a nasal endoscopy, rather than having to sterilize, they can simply dispose the used tip and attach a new one, saving the 20-minute wait of sterilization. Each Scopei tip will cost $250, with the base Scopei priced at $7,500, providing an 87% profit margin. Next slide, please. Although clinics around the world share a common objective of healing, their method of doing it varies drastically. My own experience working at hospitals in rural Mexico was far more focused on budgeting when compared to my time at St. Mary's in Nevada, which was set on efficiency. Reusable Scopei will help solve the speech impediments of lower resource regions that have never had proper access to a diagnosis. While a general overview, these regions are depicted in turquoise. Single-use Scopei will allow clinics to have a higher patient turnover and increase the bottom lines of hospitals located in areas colored orange. Both offer the best nasal endoscope for doctors and patients alike. Next slide, please. So we currently have a prototype that actually works. Protected under a provisional patent, you can see the bare bones of Scopei's hardware on the left. By connecting to any monitor via USB, it is able to stream video at 25 frames per second with a high resolution of 160,000 pixels. Our tip can currently emit light at 1280 millicandelas, which is slightly less luminous than our competitors. However, we've already consulted doctors saying that our current light is enough for nasal endoscopes, and we're sure to increase illumination with future Scopei iterations. Our prototype already has a tip diameter of 2.65 millimeters, making it only 0.15 away from our goal. On the right, we have what developing collaboratively with doctors looks like. We are determined to make Scopei the best endoscope for our end users, and we have therefore already been working with doctors in Hyderabad, India, to test and challenge our designs and receive valuable feedback on our ergonomic grip. Of course, we're happy to present more details on our design in one-on-one meetings outside of the context of this public presentation. The fact that Scopei already offers so many advantages in prototype form demonstrates a very promising future. I'll now pass it on to Anna to explain our plan for this exact future.
Hi, everybody. So you can see here the work that we've done to reach our prototype. Before COVID, we were able to travel to different clinics in Mexico and to test our prototypes with patients and with doctors, as you can see on the left. The bill of materials for our current prototype is $233. And so we do expect some design changes this summer as we work on manufacturing techniques with the support of Fishbowl. But at the price points of $2K and $7.5K, as Daniel mentioned, that gives us profit margins of 50% and 75%. So we feel very strongly that Scopei will be able to be profitable once sales are achieved in the bottom and the top right portion of that slide. Because it's a medical device, however, we do need to prove safety and efficacy before beginning sales. And Fishbowl is essential to helping Scopei cross that chasm and to fill the gap right there. I'll discuss in the upcoming slides, but one of our partners is the Cleft NGO Smile Chain that we've mentioned before. And they are extremely excited about the device and willing to fund a trial at the clinics in Mexico. And so while clinical data is not strictly required for the FDA approval process, the trial will allow us to build confidence among ENT doctors, to publish a paper proving efficacy and safety, and to also generally market the device and find stakeholders who are champions of our product. So the trial is slated to begin once FDA approval is submitted. And so while the FDA is reviewing the submission, we will be able to actively work on furthering the product and to essentially have a form of income during that time. The FDA is, of course, our biggest challenge, and so we're going to be zooming into this green bar to get a better sense of our timeline after we've talked to experts and successful startups. So next slide, please. So we've already classified the device as Class 2 and with a submission type of 510K. Class 2 is much lower burden than a Class 3 device like a pacemaker, so we're not going to be required to submit stringent clinical evidence. The focus of the submission is largely on labeling and manufacturing. And so we have a short list of possible predicate devices in place, and as Daniel mentioned, a working prototype. So we're ready to request our Q-Sub meeting with the FDA. There's three main tasks that we anticipate the FDA will ask for in the submission. That's labeling, design controls, and bench testing. On the bench testing side, we already have a draft of a traceability matrix with the user needs and the design inputs in place. We've attached that to design changes that we've made along the way and anticipate one further design review as we make design changes for manufacturability. So bench testing is the largest and the most extensive and expensive portion of the process. The list on the bottom in the middle shows the 7 bench tests that we believe will be needed based on our predicate devices. 3 of them will also be required by the IRB in order to run the smell train pilot we've discussed before. So those are the ones we'll be doing first and with the help of Fishbowl. So those are electrical safety, optical efficacy, cytotoxicity, and possibly further disinfection testing. One thing to note is that every outside material of our prototype is already biocompatibility approved, so it already has been used in Class 2 medical devices, and that pediatric devices like Scopei are exempt from the FDA user fee. So this is an extremely ambitious timeline, as you can see from the months we've put on top, but we've worked hard to put in place a really awesome group of knowledgeable partners who are excited to work with us to achieve this. So next slide, please. So these include partners in patenting, in clinical evidence, in manufacturing, and in FDA. So first, we have a pro bono contract in place with Jones Day, which is the 5th largest law firm in the United States. They are going to be helping us convert our provisional patent into a final design patent. One of the associates that are working with us actually previously used to work at the U.S. Patent Office in medical devices. And so we also have this clinical partner that we've talked about previously, this Cleft NGO Smile Train. They did a survey of the 1,000 clinics they work with in over 90 countries, and they asked, what's your #1 equipment need? And the answer was nasoendoscopes. And so that's why they are so excited to work with us, and they want to bring nasoendoscopes to the market. Post FDA approval, they're committed to buying at least 1 Scopei per each clinic. But they cannot fund any prototyping activity, and they've never worked on any kind of a hardware product before. So we need manufactured units in order to work with them and to utilize their resources. So that's where our manufacturing partner, Tyndall, comes in. They are a small manufacturing firm in Ireland that's funded by the European Union to encourage prototype scale manufacturing. So we're going to be working with them to assemble the units. And in the long run, our goal is FDA approval. And we know we need expert advice to do that effectively and successfully. So we were accepted into a pre-accelerator for medical devices called 0 to 510K. There's no funding provided and there's no equity required, but we think it'll be incredibly helpful to hear from the other startups and the experts in the program. So we've worked really hard to put these awesome partners in place, and everyone is ready to start work. The problem is that there's a huge requirement for funding that none of these partners fulfill. They're service providers above all else, and none of them have ever made a physical device. And so that's where we require Fishbowl to come in. And Fishbowl is absolutely essential to allowing us to make use of these partnerships and to bring Scopei to the world. We need our design confirmed in order to finalize the patent. We need the components purchased and assembly documents written in order for Tyndall to manufacture. And we need the manufactured units to begin testing and to also start the smell train trial. So next slide. Here you'll see how we plan to use 50K. It's absolutely essential to preparing Scopei for the incredible opportunity to work with NGO Smell Train. So the largest cost we've included on the top right is the bench test that we've talked about before, both for the IRB of the trial and for the 510K submission. Then on the left, we have the cost of prototyping services, manufacturing services that we cannot do ourselves, like metal 3D printing, urethane casting. Then we have some specialty consultants on the bottom left in coding and in FDA, and prototyping materials like components themselves. So lastly, we do include stipends in our budget. Daniel and I plan to work on this full-time from now until December. I've graduated, and Daniel is planning to take a semester off. Matthew will be joining us over the summer. And we believe it's essential to have full-time team members in order to take advantage of the opportunity with the partners we've put in place and to achieve this ambitious timeline. We super strongly believe in Fishbowl's dedication to social impact and think there's no greater impact than improving health and the ability to communicate. Next slide. We're very grateful to Fishbowl for bringing our team together. We've had an inspiring and fun 8 months working together, and we're really looking forward to continuing to do so. We all share a common mission of making modern medicine a global truth, with experience in medicine, as Matthew has as a medical doctor in Australia, in engineering, as I have with a master's in mechanical engineering, and in business, which Daniel has as an undergraduate at the Haas School of Business. We also have a large number of advisors and volunteers you can see in white and in gray at the bottom, including Dr. Marcus Bunchus at Roche. And all in all, our team is an international team who strongly believes that there's no doubt that speech is an essential component to the human experience, and we think Scopei will be a huge part in ensuring equal access to medical care all around the world. And we'll take any questions. Thank you.
That was impressively exactly 20 minutes, by the way. So we now have 20 minutes for questions. Sorry, I heard a judge jump in there.
Yeah, let's just start with a very simple question. Thanks a lot for that presentation. Very clear. Really enjoyed watching this, and you answered a lot of questions that I had. But one is, in your presentation, you said that there's an importance for having a nasal endoscopy by 3 years for the speech development of children. But then I saw a slide that said when the first word is spoken and it's not been diagnosed, then it turns out problematic for 88% of the cases, and where it is being treated, which was roughly 12%, developments like with Joaquin Phoenix turn out fine. My question is just, what's the gap, the first word between 12 months, which is typically the time the first word is spoken, and the 3 years that you outlined in the slide before?
Thanks for the question, Ralph. I'm happy to answer that one. So, so in the process of diagnosis for speech disorders, I suppose once first words are spoken, it may not be immediately obvious whether there is a speech disorder or not. But also specifically in the case of cleft, the defect in the lip, at least, if there is one, is often quite visible, and so it's known that a patient potentially has cleft. As the development of speech occurs over the next few years, it may come at a time, usually around the age of 3, when it becomes sort of a bit more obvious. And it's at that point when initial investigation usually takes place. And in the case of, even if cleft is known in the patient, the age of 3 is a really good time to be assessing what management options should be taken next. And making that decision between surgery or non-surgical management. As I mentioned before, it's an appropriate time given the size of the patient, and it's an age group where there's minimal adverse side effects, but that also trades off with not having too much of a speech development impact, as it's not too late in the child's development. Hope that answers your question.
One thing I would add too is we want the children to be able to have received some form of treatment, whether that's speech therapy or a surgery, before they enter school at age 5, because that's really a turning point where at which age that could have really large educational setbacks and social isolation, bullying being a really large factor in that.
Yeah, thanks so much for your presentation. Really interesting program. And I have a few questions. One was, Matt, you said that dirty scopes is a major problem. However, you also want to go for sterilization of your scope. So how does that fit, and how often can you really sterilize the Scopei scopes, and how can it be used? And also then for the approval, how do you want to differentiate between the reusable ones and the single-use ones?
Sure. So I'll answer the first part regarding why we're choosing also to go with the reusable version of Scopei. Essentially, it all comes down to the resources of the allocated and targeted clinics. Although we're offering a reusable Scopei, it's very different than current endoscopes because current nasal endoscopes doesn't offer the option to actually detach the entire scope. So oftentimes when you go into a clinic, you'll find that only a very small portion, which the doctor deems touch the patient, is in sterilization solution. So although we're offering a reusable Scopei in which the tips are reused, the fact that you can detach the entire tip and submerge it completely in a sterilization solution really helps ensure that there's not going to be any cross-contamination, even for these lower resource clinics. Another alternative that we're looking for with the reusable Scopei option is offering 2 tips, so that there's still a higher patient turnover for under-resourced clinics, since they can just essentially swap out the tip between use and being sterilized. So I hope that answers the first part of the question.
Yeah, and I can answer the second part about the FDA approval. So essentially, technically, they are the same device, reusable or sterilized, reusable or single use, excuse me. But they have different ways of coming. One is coming sterilized, the other one is coming non-sterilized. And so essentially, we're working on assuming that the different clinics, whether it's a clinic in San Francisco, like Stanford Medical School, or a clinic in Yucatan, like Daniel worked in as a nurse, they have different time costs. And so that's essentially what we're betting on with the time of sterilization being about 20 minutes. And on the FDA side, you are able to take a reusable device and use it one time. There's no issue doing that, but you cannot take a single-use device and use it multiple times. And so we do plan to go through the FDA process as a reusable device, and we think we will be able to sell as a single-use device, going kind of backwards, since they will be okay with you using something that's allowed to be used multiple times, one time, essentially for clinics that don't want to pay that high time cost of sterilization and that also have higher legal ramifications of wrongful death suits and things like that.
Thanks very much for clarifying. Just to follow up a little bit, how stable is your Scopei compared to what is currently on the market? Because you still need to have a good opportunity to direct the scope, and also you have to have a quite powerful light source. So how does it compare to the current methods?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about this, and maybe Daniel can chime in as well. So our current device streams at about 25 frames per second, and has about a couple LEDs built in there. It does not reach the current xenon light kind of equivalents that current endoscopes have, but we do testing on anatomical models and on cadaver as well, and we've found enough light for doctors to be able to diagnose it equally, and that's what we plan to show in our testing and with that smell train trial. So again, there's some things that we have done to a we've have less light than is currently in the market, but we believe we have more than enough light for doctors to diagnose with equal confidence.
And Andre, if the question's regarding the actual physical stability of the scope, we're currently in the design process of exactly how the connector's going to work. We already have a few options that currently exist as created parts by different manufacturers that would work totally fine. However, using the different tests, since we using models, the scope is actually can already be implemented and reaches the access points that are needed to properly diagnose in a nasal endoscope, nasal endoscopy. So the physical stability and rigidity of the scope is on par of what's needed for a nasal endoscopy.
Thank you.
I have a good job, guys, by the way. I have a couple of questions on your go-to-market strategy. So I was looking at one of the backup slides, and your cost for the sales reps, $200,000 for 3 reps with expenses. So is this the kind of sale that you think can be closed over the phone, or do sales reps need to basically pound the pavement and be in front of the customer. And then on that note, who is really the customer? Sounds like your go-to-market is the US first with your FDA filings. So who is the customer? Is it the insurance company? Is it the clinic? How does that work?
Sure. So I can start this one off. Essentially, our launch program, which is essentially with the NGO Smile Train, that's all through the NGO. That's not specific. Like we don't really have to do any specific marketing to doctors that already have like pre-existing experience with nasal endoscopes and therefore preferences. And we see that as a potential challenge into entering the US market, is that oftentimes these larger medical device companies, as I'm sure many of the judges are aware, kind of form relationships and almost a, what's the right word? A relationship with doctors to ensure that their product's going to be continued to use. So we view our primary target to be the clinics themselves, since they, especially in the US and places that are more developed, they're all going towards this bottom line of profit per procedure. Currently, a nasal endoscopy in the US costs around, it's priced around $600. And so by showing their cost savings and increased profit per procedure, I think that's our best way of marketing, essentially, is contacting clinics. We've also already actually been in meetings with certain distributors that would be like B2B with clinics themselves. So we're still investigating the best option of entering the market, but I think it's safe to say, like, currently we're targeted towards clinics.
I could chip in a little bit there as well. Just mainly with regards to the second part of the question. So there were basically two main customer segments that we identified as having gaps. The first being, of course, clinics that don't currently have access to nasal endoscopy, that could value from having a cheap alternative and cheap, affordable, and as well as effective alternative for diagnosing speech disorders and cleft. But the other one being these high volume clinics that often are in developed countries that have a real need for having a high patient turnover, being able to see a large number of patients, as well as having a basically disposable option that enables this. And so that's why we went for these two product offering targets, essentially.
Maybe a quick follow-up. I don't know if I missed it. I didn't get a sense of the size of the market, like how many of these procedures happen, let's say, in the US every year.
So I can start with that. So there's 27 million nasal endoscopies needed per year based on our market calculations in the world. But as Matthew mentioned, we think this device could also be applied to other endoscopic procedures, of which there's about 20 million done in the United States alone every year. So the small market that we're looking at targeting first, which is nasal endoscopy, has 27 million a year, and that's a pretty conservative estimate. And then if we expand to other endoscopic procedures, that's 20 million just in the United States alone.
Great, thank you.
And on this topic, we are somewhat slightly hampered by poor data records being available about the number of procedures being performed around the world. So obviously in countries like the US, Australia, other areas where the procedure numbers are recorded and kept in a database, it's available. It's really helpful, so we can sort of try and calculate that market sizing as suggested with the US numbers. But for many other countries, that sort of information is not available. So we've tried to calculate that 27 million based on the number of patients we imagine we know have cleft in each country, and basically calculated the number of endoscopies they would need from there.
Just a follow-on question. Have you also looked into the veterinary market? because also in this field, a lot of vets, they can't afford the usual endoscopes and are always looking for hand-me-downs or cheaper versions, and could also, of course, also be quite a big market as well.
That's really interesting. No, we haven't looked into the veterinary market. We have looked into scopes like otoscopes. So for ears, that's also a kind of a typical entry-level scope to some extent, where the requirements are not as stringent as nasal endoscopes. But the veterinary market is a really good idea. And then we've also kind of a lot of the design was based on the idea of a boroscope, which is a product which is used by airport technicians or by plumbers to look inside of drains or behind engines. So that's kind of where it came from. But I think the veterinary market is a really interesting thing we will look into. Yeah.
Great. Fantastic job on this proposal. I just wanted to follow up with a few questions about your expenses and kind of the ramp up. So after potentially getting your FDA approval, you can see in some of your supporting slides that your expenses ramp up quite quickly. And so I was wondering how you're thinking about fundraising to grow Scopei after FDA approval. Have you started that process? And what is your timeline for raising that follow-on capital that would be needed to achieve these milestones?
Yeah, so our bill of materials and our assembly cost actually is at really low quantities. We did that so that we can manufacture we can assemble in whichever country the orders are in. So the bill of materials is at quantity 25 actually, and all of our manufacturing materials are also, and manufacturing costs are also at low quantities. So we don't require any tooling expenses like injection molding, and we can assemble in any location that can assemble by hand. So we don't need any specialty assembly materials. So a large part of our post FDA approval process, we think we can even be profitable from the very start because we have this head start list of customers from SmileTrain, and we can be profitable, we think, with very low overhead at super low quantities of even 500 or so, of which SmileTrain is expected to purchase about 1,000 if possible. So we don't plan to take any PE funding, although we do have that kind of in the back of our heads if needed. Venture capital or PE funding. One of the organizations that comes to mind is the Fogarty Institute, which does medical devices in the Bay Area. And we've heard of a couple successful Class 2 devices that have worked with them to get funding. So that's something that we're keeping in mind. But as per our plan, we really hope that because of our low cost and the low numbers of devices we need to sell to be profitable, that we think we can do so pretty quickly from the start. And Daniel perhaps can talk a little bit more about this.
Just a quick follow-up question to that is, so will your customers pay you upon ordering, or what is the cash flow look like on your typical sales, given the different customers that you'll?
Right. Most likely it will be the cash flow will happen after the sale, the point of purchase. However, it really does depend on the clinic. Certain hospitals actually prefer having consignment with disposable medical components like our tips. And so in that case, it would be we send the order, and then dependent on how many tips they actually use is the amount of money we'd be getting in return. So it is really dependent on which customer we're talking about, I suppose.
So I have a question. A lot of it's the technology, but related to costs. A lot of the costs are for approval, testing, and the material. So on the hardware side, but for successful adoption, you also need some software for the clinician to record, share, interpret, annotate the pictures. in order for that to be, you know, for further treatment to be available. So is there any work already happening and done on the software development side that accompanies the Scopei device? And if not, or are you planning to either partner or develop in order to see it adopted?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So Daniel briefly mentioned the fact that we can use Scopei to view the video on any device at all. And that's really any device that has a USB port. And that's because what we've done is write the code in the technical prototype to utilize a form of video output that is built into every single operating system. It's the same kind of video output that is the reason that your webcam is working. And so the computer essentially recognizes that as a webcam. And so you can use any kind of existing software in place to record the procedure itself. And as long as it's, you know, being recorded on a computer that is in the clinic, we think it's a doctor's responsibility to then, you know, take care of the data and keep patient confidentiality and those kind of things. But they can use any kind of tablet, any kind of computer, any kind of monitor that has USB output. And we are considering potentially the use of software, especially to help the diagnosis. There's some studies that have shown that overlaying a grid over the image or overlaying a shape over the image of the endoscopy would better help doctors be able to diagnose and improve inter and intra rating reliability. So that's something we've considered, but it's not, we think it's a nice to have, not a need to have. So it's something that we've kept in the back of our mind. As of this point, we don't think that there is a software need because we will rely on the clinic to use whatever software comes built into the operating system. Again, that's a requirement that every operating system be able to handle this kind of video input.
I apologize, I have a little ambient noise, but I just wanted to jump in. We're actually at time. Just as a reminder, after all the presentations conclude, judges will have a chance to ask additional questions to the teams in the breakouts after the formal presentation. So thanks so much, Scopei. Thank you, judges. Really appreciate it. That was wonderful. We are now halfway through. We've seen 2 of our presentations out of 4. So we're going to go ahead and take a 5-minute break. And so we'll see you in 5 minutes. Hello. I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty, but I think you can hear me. So we can go ahead and get started. We are back from our 5-minute break. Thanks everyone for joining and refocusing. We've got 2 more amazing presentations. So our next team is going to be the Imperishables. The Imperishables are proposing a solution to post-harvest loss of crops in Africa with Nigeria as their pilot. The shelf life of crops will be extended by establishing collection centers, installing solar dryers, and supplying to the domestic and international markets. With that introduction, I will pass it to the team for 20 minutes to talk more about their proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having Team Imperishables. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our presentation. My name is Bintu Bangura, and I am from Sierra Leone. In Team Imperishables, we seek to increase farmer per capita income, increase food security, and reduce malnutrition by cutting down post-harvest losses, especially in fruits and vegetables in Africa and beyond. The dawn of the COVID-19 pandemic has magnified the importance of farmers and the need to have a sustainable food supply chain model. Consequently, our mission includes leveraging sustainable technology and redesigning value chain models to reduce fruits and vegetable post-harvest losses. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Our problem statement. According to the Food and Agricultural Organization, a 2018 studies shows that 727 million sub-Saharan Africans depend on crop farming income. 120 billion is being generated from crop farming every year. And unfortunately, 10 to 12%, which translates to 12 billion, is always lost to post-harvest. The seriousness of these losses is seen in the fact that this could be enough to feed the entire population of Angola, Zimbabwe, Swaziland, Namibia, and Malawi for a whole year. This in turn leads to limited profits for farmers that prevented them from scaling the quality and quantity of their produce, and also threatens food security and increases malnutrition. We are going to start solving this problem from Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone, our pilot country, is in West Africa with 21,000 tons of mango produce every year. Sadly, 45% of this, which translates to 45 million US dollars, is lost due to post-harvest losses. The main cause of this, however, is poor handling during harvest, lack of proper storage facilities, lack of sustainable markets, and poor infrastructure, especially when it comes to connecting roads. We will be focusing for our pilot fruits on mangoes. Next slide, please. Our solution. Focusing on mangoes, we are going to establish a 3-step solution. The first solution we're going to establish is establishment of collection centers. Mangoes can be grown in every district in Sierra Leone. So we have decided to establish collection centers in all of those districts, whereby we would work with farmer cooperatives that will consist of 15 to 20 farmers who would bring together their produce to our collection centers. And in that collection centers, the mangoes would be graded, disinfected, washed, dried, and packaged. These collection centers for these farmers will benefit them because it will increase their bargaining power. They will be receiving information and also trainings And they will also have access to microfinance to scale their food production. In these collection centers, the second step will involve installing solar dryers. We will install and implement sustainable and efficient solar fruit drying technology to dry the harvested mangoes. This will increase the shelf life of mangoes and reduce losses by up to 95%. This will also protect the environment because the energy we're using is clean. It will not pose any threat to the environment. Because in as much as we want to protect food security, we also want to look after our environment. The third segment of our solution would be accessing the market. We are going to focus on both international and national markets. But for starters, we are going to concentrate on the national market. Our studies shows that there are 3 types of dried mangoes. The first one is natural dried mangoes, wherein no added sugar or additive could be added. And this is mainly consumed domestically. The second type is conventional dried mangoes. These ones would have added preservative, and it is mainly sold in the international market. And the third one is sweetened dried mangoes, which is normally soaked in sugar syrup and has added preservative during production. And this also penetrates the international market. Being that we're going to be focusing in the national market for starters, we are going to be focusing on the natural dried mangoes without any sugar or additives. So how do we get these mangoes to shelf, the dried mangoes to shelf? We are going to partner with domestic distributors, retailers, and wholesalers to get the produce to shelf. And again, we are not only concentrating in Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone has neighboring countries like Liberia and Guinea, which is very easy to access. 4 or 5 hours takes you long to get into these countries. So we will also have access to those markets. And because it is the same West African country, mango is not new to us, even though dried mango is a novelty, especially in Sierra Leone, which is an advantage for us. So we will also increase our collection centers' visibility by creating a one-stop web where people, and so that we can create an efficient supply chain and people will have access to know our capabilities and the quality of our mangoes. We'll put all the information of our dried mangoes, the raw material we use in making it, and the components that is being used in producing them. So with that being said, I'll hand over to our next presenter that will focus on the prototype.
Next slide, moving on to prototype. We have acquired a single dryer from one of our partnering organizations called Scopei Enterprise, which is based in Uganda. So with that one dryer we have acquired, we carried out our first prototype, which was of highest fidelity. So with that dryer, we have found that it has the carrying capacity of 50 kgs a day and can take a maximum of 8 hours to dry mangoes. So this makes this type of dryer 3 times more efficient than the conventional dryer, hence helping in saving the energy. So our production cost per 100 packet is $0.38, and that 100 packet will be going for $3, which gives us a profit margin of 56%. And our projected sales unit per month is 10,000, and with a monthly revenue of 30,000. So we have also made some interesting findings in our prototypes that the dried mangoes peels, after you peel the mangoes, you can actually use the peels to make a powder, and that powder can be turned, like used as an ingredient in smooth. Thus, we are going to have like another revenue stream, hence a diversity. Also, on the same point, it means that we are going to have a zero waste system, that we are producing and benefiting on everything. Hence, therefore, we are going to have less environmental impact. So on these prototypes, we invited family and friends to test the product, and they have found that the dried mangoes it's crunchy and can retain the whole nutrients and sweetness. Also, these dryers can not only dry dried mangoes, it can also dry other 5 types of fruits, which include tomatoes, bananas, apples, pineapples, and the mangoes we have already mentioned. And this gives us a great opportunity to scale up when it comes to expand our project as time goes on. And next slide. We are moving on to milestones. So since December, we have made great strides towards achieving our goals. And between December and January, using the design-driven thinking model, we have conducted a diagnostic in the areas which we aim to establish our centers. Why establishing the centers in different areas? It's as the way of curbing the problems of poor infrastructure of transporting the raw materials. So we have decided to put our collecting centers in the areas that we are intending to operate. So the purpose of the diagnostic was to understand the magnitude of the problem, as well as understanding our market and consumer preferences. So with the information that we have gathered, that gives us a way forward in making our very own phase of the solution. So from March, as I mentioned earlier, we worked on the prototype and forming important partnerships with those people whom we are intent to work with in our business model. Then in June, we'll be compiling the consumer feedback on our product as long as we are still continuing carrying the prototypes and giving people to test and making sensory tests and all the stuffs. So we'll be compiling that information, since that feedback is very important in constructing, in coming up with a very good product and constructing a viable solution. Then from July to September, we'll be working on acquiring legal documents, such as operating license, certifying our products with the standard board responsible for that in Sierra Leone, getting the certificate of incorporation, and making sure that we get all the certificate that complies with food security. Then in October, we are planning to launch the project, and we are hoping to get with the fund that we'll get from the Fishbowl. It will take us to another mile. So moving on to the budget. Next slide. So on the budget, we require 4,500 to get the Sparky dryers, which are going for 250 each. So these amounts include the shipping cost to Sierra Leone. We also need 5,000. We also need 10,000 for inventories, and 5,000 for technology cost. For example, we need office computers and all the related information, such as a module for Wi-Fi in our office. Then we need 5,000 for advertising and promoting our products. Since this is going to be a new product, we need massive advertising and promotion. Then we are going to have 5,000 for installation and also the freight charges of other things that we are going to import. For example, the moisturizing test that we use for testing the humidity of our final product. Also, our labor cost and operation machine is going for 5,000, and the cost for getting legal documents, license, and permits is 5,000, and the contingent costs that are going for 2,500.
Next slide, please. So with reference to our supply chain, we have three main stages when it comes to our supply chain. And the stages are from the farmer, we have our collection centers and our point of sales. And with this, we seek to have a comprehensively efficient value chain, which is from the farm and to the consumer's table. The mango farmers would have easy access to the collection centers that will be established close to the mango farms. These collection centers will be proportionately distributed throughout the mango growing regions and provinces in Sierra Leone. As such, we are solving the problem of access to the city markets through bad routes and also difficulty in accessing transportation. And at the collection centers, the mangoes would be cleaned, sorted, solar dried by our machines, and then packaged for the market. These collection centers will be marketed and made visible in our on-demand online platform. This platform, we would ensure to highlight the collection center's location, the availability of dried mangoes, the price, and also the mango varieties we have. Therefore, the distributors, the wholesalers, and the retailers we have as partners will effectively make orders according to their geographic convenience, their price capabilities, and also their variety preferences. We also have the international markets and processing firms who will also be able to have the product visibility and make purchases appropriately through the online platform. Please, next slide. So far, hello?
We can hear you.
So far, we've been able to secure a total of 6 strategic partnerships, and we are still seeking out for more within Sierra Leone and in the international markets. Our first partner we sought after was the Sparky Social Enterprise Limited, which is based in Uganda and are the manufacturers of our solar fruit dryers. This enterprise is very innovative and is able to customize these dryers as per our preferences for a cost for a cost of $250 with shipment included to Sierra Leone. Our next partner also is Shashi Foods. Shashi Foods is a pro-food company, which is actually co-founded by one of our team members, Miss Forget Sharika, and is based in Zimbabwe. Shashi Food does not only give us valuable advices on unfamiliar market path since the inception of our team, but it has also been a source of inspiration and great to our team. The extent to which our partnership with Shashi Foods extend is borderless and promises to be more impactful. We also have the Sierra Leone Agricultural Institute that has agreed to help us in the variety of mangoes that they can help us educate our farmers on, and also link us with already existing farmer corporations within Sierra Leone. And also, we have the Sierra Leone Produce Monitoring Board. The Sierra Leone Produce Monitoring Board would ensure that our product meets the regulatory quality standards through providing processing guidelines and expert advice all through the initial stages of our production. As a B2B company startup, as we envision ourselves, we have acquired a number of local distributors, wholesalers, and retailers who have already joined us on board and also helped us in getting the feedback of our prototypes, and can't wait to have a value-added version of mangoes on their shelves, as it is something that they've not seen in Sierra Leone as it is in other countries. The farmers, who are the core and foundation of our value chain and our most significant partners, also help us validate the problem and have so far depicted expectation and excitement at the thought of a sustainable market and increased profits. Amongst the partners we are looking to have on board soon are also the Ministry of Finance, which would advise us, which promises to advise us on the funding opportunities and relevant market informations we need as a startup, and also the Ministry of Agriculture in Sierra Leone. Next slide, please. So our social impact. Our impacts on the society are diverse and well in line with the Standard Development Goals, which is the Sustainable Development Goals. With our eco-friendly and circular economy approach, we hope to significantly reduce our carbon footprint and contribute positively to climate change. Our value chain will increase job opportunities in almost every step of the supply chain, apart from having solar dryer machine operators. We will hire a number of front office staff.
Apologies to interrupt you, just a quick time check. We're actually over time. I know you have 2 more slides, so if you could just wrap it up in a couple, 30 more seconds, that would be great.
Okay. So this will lead to the economic growth of previously unexpected people, and also our aim is to reduce food security, to increase food security and reduce malnutrition, which would help us in acquiring the Sustainable Development Goal 6. In one of the Sustainable Development Goals, we also have the Nutrition for Good Health as a social impact we intend on having, and also we would increase farmer visibility and active role in the industry in Sierra Leone, as we would create an on-demand online platform.
Thank you so much. Just a quick introduction of our team. So our team is diverse and is made up of passionate and skilled people who cut across different industries and sectors and educational experiences. So 2 of our team members, Forget and Kennedy Okello, have already established agricultural startups before. Forget has established Chashi Foods in Zimbabwe. Kennedy Okello has established Paleo Group Limited in Rwanda, and they're both pro food security and kicking out malnutrition. Bintu Bangura, who is our marketing and advertising lead, has a diploma in mass communication and is also a current law student. Our final team member is Patrick Osafage, who is in charge of business, who is in charge of management and logistics of all our operations. So we are confident in our dream of redesigning food value chains and elevating farmer poverty, not only in Africa, although we are starting from Sierra Leone and expanding into Africa, but also to the rest of the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. We'll start the 20 minutes now for questions. Judges, I pass it to you.
Great. Hi. Well, I'm happy to kick off this time. I actually have a pineapple farm in Uganda. And so one of these days I would love to be a customer, because we are looking for ways to add value. And I just learned a lot from this presentation. So a couple of questions I have about your business model, just to clarify kind of which parts of that value chain you will own. Is first, in the budget, I didn't see anything about the collection centers. Will you be renting collection, or will you be renting space for these collection centers? Will you ever own these collection centers? And more specifically, I wanted to confirm, will you continue to own the solar dryers, or will the farmer cooperatives own any part of those 2 critical parts of your value chain?
Thank you so much, Ms. Lindsay. For the collection centers, we'll be partnering with existing farmer cooperatives, and that's where critical partners or strategic partners like the Sierra Leone Agricultural Research Institute come in, because they help us to not only spot, identify, but also connect with these existing farmer cooperatives, because as Bintu mentioned before, mangoes are grown in almost every single corner of Sierra Leone. So these farmers have some form of organization or some form of togetherness in terms of how they get to approach the market and how they get to, just solve their farmer problems in the most basic sense. So it's these existing cooperatives that we're going to partner with, and these cooperatives exist close to the mango farms. So we are going to make sure that our collection centers are integrated into the existing cooperatives close to the farmers. So in the end, it's a win-win situation. The farmers get empowered, and their produce gets taken to the market, and their visibility gets increased. And about who gets to own the solar dryers. So initially, we have to be very concerned about our scalability. And one of the aspects of getting to scale, getting profitable. So to ensure that we're profitable, we won't be able to let the farmers own the solar dryers at the very initial stages. But once we've achieved, we've achieved a sustainable breaking point, we are going to maybe consider a way of partnering with the farmers, because we have to, if we let the farmers have the solar dryers, then we have to take care of things like maintenance and installation. And they've never used these solar dryers before, so we have to train them on how to get to use them. So initially, we'll concentrate a lot on having to own the solar dryers, and then just getting to add value to the farmer produce and getting their produce to the market through our an enhanced channel. But definitely getting them to own the solar dryers, if it's going to be good for them and good for the value chain in the end, is a consideration we might put.
Okay, great. Yeah, and just a follow-up question is, you mentioned microfinance the farmers. Will you be doing that, on your balance sheet with your funds, or will you look to partner with a microfinance institution that serves farmers in the markets you work?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
So
with the microfinance, that's why we've sought out the Ministry of Finance as our partner. One problem that we identified in seeking them as a partner was that these mango farmers do not have a sustainable income, such that because of the unsustainability of the mangoes, how frequent their mangoes get spoiled and rotten after production, they find it very difficult to give out monies to them as loans, or maybe monies they could invest in their farms and work. So as a startup that is helping them extend their shelf life and give them sustainable markets, such that after harvest, they have a place where they can turn these mangoes into dry mangoes and extend the shelf life and reduce losses by 95%. We are giving these farmers a more sustainable source of income, such that they wouldn't have losses and wouldn't know their income at the end of harvest. So this data has promised to help us with the Ministry of Finance of Sierra Leone. As we have spoken to them, they are ready to help us if we need them to help these farmers, add them to their business and development initiative, and they would help them with finance.
Yeah, so just a quick addition to that. So basically, we're just giving the farmer a little more leverage that they could not have found on their own, because now they have more profits, now they can access more markets, now they're more trustworthy in the face of these microfinance institutions. So partnership will be very key.
Just to add on, so the percent, we are going to increase the farmers' per capita income by 38%, which is very significant.
So just to understand that correctly, from this $3 per kilogram per 100 gram, 38 cents go back to the farmers.
Pardon?
Just to clarify so that I also understand it correctly. So from the $3 per 100 gram that you mentioned, where you calculated a profit margin of 56%, 38 cents go back to the farmers where per kilogram or per 100 gram, or how do you calculate that?
Okay, so that was the production cost that we have with a profit margin of 54%. So 15% of the profit will be going back to the centers and help the farmers, and the other 10% will be channeled towards the expansion of the project.
Also, in addition to that, most importantly, the 38% increments in the per capita income of the farmers we mentioned is mostly is calculated on the losses that these farmers initially experienced after harvest. So if a farmer should harvest and at the end of it, or 38% of his produce is lost due to post-harvest losses, his income is being decreased by 38%. So, and we are making sure that we are reducing loss by 95%, thereby covering a whole chunk of the mangoes that were being lost after harvest.
I have a question on.
You go, Darren.
All right, thanks. I have a question on the dryers itself. So I'm curious if the dryers are applicable to other crops as you continue to build this business, and what are some of the other crops that you think you could bring on board to continue this mission?
Okay, so these machines can dry, as I mentioned, bananas, pineapples, apples, tomatoes, and can be also used to dry vegetables like cabbage, kale, and many more others. You can also use it to dry like fruits like guavas. So it's not a limited dryer. It's all what will change is only the drying time, and each fruit has a different drying time. So there will be adjustment to everything. Let's say we want now to dry pineapples. Pineapples takes less time. For example, it takes 5 to 6 hours, because in our company, Shashi Foods, we also dry pineapples. It takes us 5 to 6 hours. So like it will be only making adjustment when we want to use it for a different crop beside the mango.
Okay, just to add to that, Sierra Leone is also blessed with all of those fruits and vegetables mentioned, and all of them face similar problems of wastage and rot, because during the season they are produced in abundance and only limited quantity would be utilized. Most of the others goes to waste and found in garbage.
Thank you.
Yes, and as people who are championing the prevention of waste in this value chain, that is why we mentioned that the peels of the mangoes and some of the other fruits could be dried and used as ingredients for making smoothies. And this is something we got after our prototype. We tried that, and it really proved well, and we used it to make a smoothie. So giving us a zero waste in our production value chain.
So team, I have a question. Thanks a lot for the presentation. It's sort of two questions, but with the same, coming from the same background. The cost of a dryer seems to be around $250, if I got that right from your financial plan. So my question is, what's the operational cost of a dryer? And the background of my question is, right now, it seems that that's at the collection centers, but you set out that there's a lot of perishing happening post-harvesting. So I assume that's time related. The longer a mango isn't processed, the more likely it is to be perishing. So why wouldn't the dryer be at the farmer's location? So we're not, the food, there's less food that basically goes to waste on its way from the farmer's harvesting point to the collection center.
Thank you so much.
in the presentation, we mentioned that the collection centers are actually going to be proportionately distributed, or actually going to be proportionately distributed all over Sierra Leone, so that these collection centers are going to be established closer to the farmers. So the distance required for a farmer to travel from his or her farm to the collection center is not that of a long distance, as we'll be acquiring 50 dryers and it will be proportionately distributed.
Okay, to add to that, I mentioned earlier that each district produces mangoes. So our collection centers will be targeting districts. The villages in the districts are very closer to each other. So, but if they should come with the mangoes to Freetown, the distance will be too long, sometimes a whole day with no proper transportation. So if these collection centers are being established in all of the districts, it will cut down on the transportation time and the manhandling time of the mangoes. And in future, probably we'll be even looking at providing transportation, or maybe breaking the collection centers down to village levels. For instance, we make a cluster of 10 villages in a district, and then we put a collection centers there, 10 villages in the district. So that's what we want to do.
Got it. But then let me follow up with a question. How many of the collection centers are already there? That's facility, that would be rental costs and setting up currently on your number slide. I don't see costs for collection centers. Are they already present?
Okay, yeah. So we are going to, just to reiterate, we're going to establish the collection centers. We're going to incorporate the collection centers with the existing farmer cooperatives. So the Sierra Leone Agricultural Research Institute has already helped us to identify 10 farmer cooperatives. That's why we mentioned that we're going to buy 50 solar dryers and put 5 solar dryers in each cooperative or collection center. So right now we're going to deal with 10 collection centers, stroke cooperatives, because those are the ones we've been able to identify so far with the help of the Sierra Leone Agricultural Research Institute.
Thanks, that answers it.
Well, a quick follow-up to Ralph's question, because I can imagine these small buildings where these farmer cooperatives operate out of, and the farmers are quite close to them. But then one of the things I've seen with dried fruit businesses in Africa is that the domestic consumer is typically more in the cities. Or, as you said, you might want to target the international market, which has very high margins on these dried fruits. So I guess one cost question I have is, what do you think the costs are to get the dried product from the collection centers to the point of sale, if you will? And have you factored that yet into this budget?
Yes. So transportation from our collection centers to the major cities, like we said, is not going to be something that's going to be difficult for us, because we are partnering with other businesses. As I mentioned earlier, we are looking to be a B2B corporation, such that we deal directly with wholesalers, retailers, and local supermarkets within the vicinity. So it's going to be more like a partnership where these wholesalers and retailers could make their demand and we transport it to them. And transportation in Sierra Leone from one province to the other is quite low. The issue with the transportation with the fresh mangoes were the duration in transportation and how difficult the longer time it took to get into the cities. And sometimes the strains it goes through made it spoil during the way, even before it perishes.
Okay, so just to add on that, we have figured out that the cost for transporting dried materials, which are lighter than the raw materials itself, is going to be lost, and we are going to be able to carry a very huge quantity, which is considerable, let's say in boxes, as compared to transport, like the raw mango to the market. So there is a drastic reduction of cost on transport, putting into consideration the weight of the product itself.
I have a quick question on the cost of the mangoes. So if you were to buy a kilogram of fresh mangoes, what would that cost in the market?
So in Sierra Leone, mangoes are not sold per kilograms. They are sold per quantity. For instance, you buy 1 of 5. So let me say 5 huge mangoes will be costing $2.
No, I don't think it's
okay.
5 huge mangoes. And also it depends on the variety of mangoes, because in Sierra Leone we have different kinds of varieties, more than 10 varieties of mangoes.
Right. So would the customer be willing to pay $3 for 100 grams of mangoes, or is the market not Sierra Leone, then it's somewhere else?
Okay.
The market is in Sierra Leone, and I believe the customers will be willing to pay because we have similar fruits. For instance, we have the cashew products. Cashew is very cheap when it's raw, but when the local people dried it, it is sold at, let me say 80,000 leones, which translates to $8. And it is being sold on the street by hawkers, not even on shelves of supermarkets. And people that are driving by always buy them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so also benchmarking, to add to that, we benchmarked the price of our product with other West African countries within the same lane as Sierra Leone. I, for instance, are from Ghana, and 100 grams of dried mangoes in Ghana cost $7 as compared to Sierra Leone.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, also just a bit of follow-up on that. How can you make sure that you also have then the requirements for the export? Because you also mentioned you have to have some preservatives added, etc. And how does it impact the price and then also your profit margin?
So currently, as we mentioned earlier, we are going to be piloting in Sierra Leone and piloting with the mango fruit, right? So with our pilot, we are going to put all our focus in the domestic market initially. We're going to ensure that that market is saturated, because when we are piloting, we're also seeking to get a significant market reception feedback, significant operational and logistical feedback, so that when we expand with enough information and enough knowledge. So in terms of the logistics or the complexities that come with going into the international market, we are not only seeking, we mentioned in our partnership segment that we've already gotten 6 partnerships, but we are seeking to partner also with the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Agriculture. And we believe that such strategic partners are going to come in handy, especially after they've seen the kind of impact we created in the domestic market, to help us with information and any logistical aid when trying to conquer the international market. Because every government, especially African governments, the farmer is like the unit holder or foundation of the economy. So any organization that comes in to boost the per capita income of the farmer or to boost the economic condition of the farmer is always well viewed. There's a public opinion that is positive towards such an organization, and we believe that we are very optimistic that we're going to get a lot more strategic partnerships and advisors away from the 8 that we have right now, that are going to aid us a lot in not only realizing but also conquering the international market. And more, in addition to that, one of our team members, Forget Shareka, has a company in Zimbabwe called Chashi Foods. And Chashi Foods has not only managed to saturate the Zimbabwean market, but it's also working on going international. They're planning to get to Kenya, to Rwanda, and move further south to Botswana, Namibia, and even South Africa. And they have, as we mentioned earlier, they are going to help us a lot, not only in walking these unfamiliar paths, but the fact that we have a member in there who is a major co-founder or a major initial founder of the team is going to be an advantage to us in terms of skill and experience too. So we're quite confident.
Thank you so much. We are actually at time for questions. I apologize. Just a reminder, we will be able to have those private team judge debriefs at the end of the presentations, but I want to respect our last team's time, if that's okay. Okay. Thank you so much, Imperishables. Really appreciate the presentation and the Q&A. I'm sure that there'll be more in the private chambers later. A lot of rich conversation. So I'd like to welcome our next team, TNT. The TNT is focused on reducing the impact that water for agriculture has on climate change. To solve this environmental problem, they're developing a smart irrigation control unit that is climate smart and precisely applies water to crops. I am proud to pass it over to the TNT team to take it from here. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. My name is Josh Bambale from Uganda. TNT actually means today and tomorrow. Currently, all over the world, most farmers, whenever they want to increase production, they think of increasing land. They think of increasing the amount of water they are supplying to the farms. They think of more fertilizer or even more financial resources. However, all these things are exerting a lot of pressure on the environment. Therefore, TNT, which stands for today and tomorrow, comes up with a sustainable solution that will lead to producing more with less resources. Let's take an example of our problem. Next slide, please. Next slide. We realize the problem. Yeah. We realize only about 0.7% of the world water is available for use. That is in agriculture, domestic use, and also industrial use. But you see, up to 68% of this water is being taken by agriculture. However, 30 to 55% of this water that is taken by agriculture is being wasted in form of leakages and irrigation inefficiencies. But we all know that water is one of the highly billed resources. Therefore, it increases the cost of production of the farmer. More so, irrigation management is labor intensive and time consuming. Actually, labor is one of the highest costs incurred by farmers. This motivates our solution. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, the solution. Team TNT develops a current and next generation solution. Since we are looking at sustainability of resources, it's a climate smart and precision irrigation control unit. This control unit applies irrigation water to crops where they are needed in right quantities and at the right time. It is remotely controlled in that the farmer does not need to be physically on the farm for him to apply water. He can automatically switch on, he can remotely switch on and off the system even when he's not physically on the farm. More so, the system notifies the farmer or the client by an SMS in case of irrigation requirement, fertilizer requirement, or even it has even predictive maintenance abilities. It also, in case of a leakage, also notifies the farmer about the severity of the leakage and the location of the leakage on the farm. Using the remote control function, the farmer switches off the system depending on the severity of the leakage. How does the system do all this? It bases on the data from the soil sensors, the weather sensors, and the crop properties to automatically switch off and on the system. Also to send the notifications to the farmer. Our system uses solar power since where we are going to launch the product that is in Kenya, most farmers are off the electricity grid. Therefore, we opted for this abundant energy resource that is clean and environmentally sustainable to use for powering our system. Next slide. So, due to climate change, water is going to be the next oil of the next generation. Most transboundary water resources will lead to conflicts. Therefore, as young professionals who will be in that generation are developing solutions or sustainable solutions for these challenges. We realize our solution is going to cause a lot of impact, not only on water saving, but also in the food sector. It's going to reduce the water losses on the farm by 50%. This is not just reducing the water, but is also reducing the bill of the client, of the farmer into agriculture or into production. It's going to increase his harvest by 60%. Whenever the harvest increases, that is food security for the communities, and also the income of the farmer increases. The reason the crop harvest is increasing is because water is applied at the right time and in the right amount. We are going to create employment for more than 500 people in Africa. I mean, in 5 years, we realize unemployment rates are up to 78% now in Africa. Therefore, it's a big challenge that we as well need to tackle through entrepreneurship. Next slide. So, how are we going to reach out to our market? During the startup phase, we are going to partner with farmers cooperatives. These farmers will now introduce us to their member farmers. This is being used after doing our research. We realized that up to 82% of the farmers in Kenya subscribe to farmers cooperatives. So this was an opportunity for us to partner with their cooperatives that later on they can introduce us to their member farmers. As we scale up to the nearby countries such as Uganda, Tanzania, and even our home countries where the team members come from, that is Uganda, Nigeria, and Malawi, we hope to set up branches in those different countries that will now give us access to individual farmers in those countries, and also to NGOs that support farmers. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, it takes only a human to identify a problem, a visionary to propose a solution, but it requires an entrepreneur to do something about it. Team TNT is full of entrepreneurs. That's why we are not only proposing a solution, but we are doing something about it. We've already carried out research and idea validation. We've developed a prototype. We've reached out to all our partners in this business, and we are going to launch this business come September. We are a very passionate and able team. That is our strength. In our team, we have a water and irrigation engineer, that is myself, and with experience of about 5 years working with farmers in Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. We have a business developer, that is Abdallah Juma. He studies from Kenya, from our pilot area. So he has a 1-year experience in marketing products within Kenya. Then also we have an electronic engineer from Nigeria. This gives us the confidence that we are going to do this. We are going to provide this solution to our pilot area. We are also enjoying the virgin market of Africa. Actually, all our competitors, that is Netafim, Rainbird, Jane, they are not doing anything for Africa. So since we are from Africa and we've already identified this opportunity, we are going to capitalize first in Africa here to ensure that we reach out to all the people that need us. Because we've already carried out the research, we know that there is a very massive need. Our system does not require use of internet because it relies on SMS and USSD technology. All our competitors' solutions, they require internet. And this has been a challenge because in Africa, internet is still expensive and not available in most areas. Our solution is cheap, yet remains still very effective because it combines all the 3 requirements to develop this solution. Our competitors always, you find that one is maybe depending on soil moisture to apply water, or is basing on weather to apply water. But for us, we are combining the 3. That is the soil moisture, the weather data, and the crop properties. This gives us a very high efficiency that our competitors are not achieving. But we also have a few weaknesses. One is that we are new in the market, meaning that we shall have to do massive marketing to penetrate the market. 2 is that we haven't actually protected our idea, and already established companies can easily overrun us by taking our idea. Therefore, we are looking at ways to protect our idea, such as privacy agreements with all people work with, and also maybe acquiring the intellectual property protection, no legal requirements. Next slide. Yeah, I'll call in my colleague to talk more on the prototype development.
Okay, thank you, Josh. So for the prototype development, we spent the past 2 weeks developing a prototype for the product, and we've come up with this device. So this is the main device. So this is a smart irrigation device, unlike the one we see in the market. So this uses SMS technology, USSD technology, instead of the internet. So this is ideal for people in rural areas where they don't have enough data plans, or they don't have access to energy. So this device tells us accurately the temperature, the moisture level, the humidity, and the water tank level. So not only does this save water, it also saves energy. So this device uses 20 watts, which is about 2 light bulbs, to operate. And if your water tank is full, it automatically cuts off the power to your water tank to reduce power consumption. So we try to make this device as compact as possible and as cheap as possible. So we did a lot of project research and selected the cheapest components because our target markets are low income earners and farmers in rural areas. So we try to look at products, parts that are cheap and affordable. So I set up a display. So this is an example of a farmland. So this is the soil moisture sensor. It is currently measuring the soil moisture and is also measuring the water. This is the tank. Is also measuring the amount of water in the tank, and there's also a water pump there that is going to pump water into the tank. So this is our prototype, and we plan to improve on it. Our future scope, we plan to scale the system in the sense that we plan to provide the farmers with data visualization on the details of the sensor data and provide it for them in a map. So they can actually analyze what has been going on in the farm, maybe over the past 30 days. Also, we try to make it solar compatible. We realize that it's not, there's no accurate power supply in rural areas. So we made it power efficient. So it works on solar and it uses USSD technology. So this is a scalable system that can be used even with the current system that are in place in the farm. So you don't necessarily need to reinstall your entire irrigation system. It works perfectly with the current irrigation system in place. So that is all from the prototype development. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. I'll take you through the 5 years financial project that TNT has. So as we can see, we have the prototype that we worked on, and we're able to get very cheap material that we could use to assemble the product. And in doing so, our production cost was narrowed to $180. But with this, if we're able to move into mass production, the price could even go lower than $180. And with the product unit price, we're able to settle on the $230, which will give us a $50 profit margin. And if you look at the investment, if we're able to get $50,000, we'll be able to break even in the second year of running the business. But if we're able to get an investment of $30,000, we'll be able to break even in the third year. So with this, right after our break-even point, we'll be able to self-sustain the business in the second year and moving on. You can move to the next slide, please. Okay, so this is our budget expenditure in the first year. Prototype and development testing was $1,000, and team mobility, since our piloting area will be Kenya, we require the other team members to travel to Kenya, which will cost us about $2,700. And looking at Kenya as an agricultural sector, most farmers require to see the product before they can use it. So we would want to do a demonstration farm setup. So with this, we've already talked to several people, both in Uganda and Kenya, who will be able to provide us with land, and we'll be able to carry out a demonstration of the farm setup. And by September 2020, we'll be able to have a mass production, which will cost us about 8,280. And in July, we'll have the piloting sales and marketing, which will cost us 6,000. And research and development is very key to us because we want to keep on improving the product as we get feedback from the farmers, so that we can be able to produce something that will be very suitable to our farmers. So we'll require $2,400, and operation overheads are roughly 3,500. Giving us a total of $30,000. Next slide, please. So with the partners that we work with, we're able to identify our key partners, which first of all will be the Fishbowl Challenge, with which we solely depend on. So after having the Fishbowl Challenge, we'll have Safaricom. Safaricom is a telecommunication company here in Kenya. So with this partnership with them, we'll be able to get the USSD and SMS messages. So with this partnership, we believe we'll have a lower rate on the messages. And then for our hardware components and suppliers, we have with Electronic, which one of our team members has actually worked with, and they have cheap and very and good quality components. And I'm doing my studies in Strathmore University, which also has a lab that they do product research and development. So I've been able to partner up with the lab, and they've also provided us with space so that we can be able to improve our product as we continue with the mass production. And we've also been in touch with farmers cooperatives as well as individual farmers. We have a total of nine farmers cooperatives and individual farmers who are willing to try out the new product. That's once we have done the farm demonstration. And I think with that, I can be able to close up our presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate this great presentation. So now we've got 20 minutes for the judges.
Thanks, guys, for the presentation. Really enjoyed that. Remind me of my data science days in Africa 3 years ago. So I have a technical question. The sensor, very much like the live demonstration, you showed that the moist sensor was put in soil and the water one, but that means the whole device is very close to water. So how much effort have you put into waterproofing it? Because I could imagine water itself would not interact well with the electronics. So put another way, how far away can the moist and the water sensor be so that the device is safe from spillover from water?
Thank you very much for that question. Well, this is, we did the prototype based on a small scale. On a large scale, the device is going to be connected locally. There's going to be a local network in the farm whereby the moisture sensors are going to be connected. These moisture sensors are waterproof moisture sensors. So water doesn't affect it. So the actual device is going to be inside maybe the building, while the sensors are going to be on the farmland. So the sensors are not going to affect, or water is not going to affect the device, because the device is not going to be directly on the farm.
So just to follow up on this, so that means what we saw in the demo, where the sensor was connected with a wire, you're going to have it connected over USSD in the final
going to be connected.
product.
It's going to be connected over a local area network, which is Wi-Fi.
Oh, local area network. Got it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for the presentation. Really interesting. From the perspective of how many acres you can cover, and how can you make sure that also from a maintenance perspective, is it something that also the farmer can maintain himself? If there's, I don't know, an animal running around ripping out the sensors, do you maybe also have some protection or some sensors in there to make sure that the sensors are always in place? So how do you approach that bit?
Okay, so I'll tackle on the maintenance first. So once the farmer purchases the product, we agree to give a 6 months warranty. So within this period, we'll have a maintenance team that will be able to go to the farm and be able to fix anything that needs to be fixed or checked. So after the 6 months, then that's when we can have the farmer to pay for any maintenance that needs to be done. And then also we are looking at providing different packages for the product. So what I mean by different packages is with the different types of farms, let's say the large scale farms and the small scale farms, they'll require different requirements that they'll use on their farm. So the large scale farmers can be able to purchase the packages that will be able to fit the large scale farming, and the small scale farming, they'll have their own package. So with these packages, they'll have different prices.
Thank you. What is then the revenue stream for you once you've sold the device? So how much have you calculated for the small versus the large farming package?
Okay, thank you for the question. From the presentation, we showed that $230 is the cost, is like the market price for the product, but that was for the small package, because we realized most of the farmers in Africa, actually the biggest number are smallholder farmers. So we developed this on that basis, but for a large holder farmer, it could go up to like $400 US. Thank you.
And I would like to add to it also. So another revenue model for us is going to be based on the large scale farmers. So we're going to be providing data from the farm. We're going to be providing it to the farmers, the soil moisture data, also predictive analysis data. So with that service, we're going to be requiring a monthly fee, but it's going to be postpaid. So it's going to be calculated at the end of the month, and it's going to be just a little fee. Thank you.
Yeah, so I have, I really also enjoyed this presentation, a great product. And I love how you're designing for extreme affordability and the smallholder farmer in mind. I guess the follow-up question I have to that is, do you envision your customers needing financing to purchase this product, or do you imagine the customer for the $230 irrigation system being able to buy that in cash?
Actually, $230 US from experience is quite affordable for an average farmer in Kenya and Uganda, actually. But the reason why we had to partner with cooperatives is that they always have their savings with those cooperatives. So we can use some kind of, from the partnership, we shall use their financing from the cooperative. Like the cooperative will work as security for the farmers in case they can't afford the system all at once in cash. Thank you.
Okay, great. And then my next question is about your manufacturing partners. So who will you work with to ramp up mass production, to take this from your prototype into a mass production? Will you do that in East Africa? Will you do that outside of East Africa? And who will that partner be?
Well, for the mass manufacturing of the product, we are looking to get local manufacturers to strengthen our supply chain. So we're looking to get our products manufactured in Uganda or Kenya. So we've spoken to a lot of manufacturing partners there, and they are also willing to help out once we are ready. So we already have a fully working prototype. So it's just left for us to get the funding and to make the necessary changes that we need to make before we move on to the final mass production.
Okay. And just to follow up there is can you share the names of any of these local manufacturers? At Phoenix, we designed all of our products in Africa, but in the end, we had to do our mass production in China because we simply did not find a manufacturing partner in East Africa that was able to not only maintain the quality, but even partners that were doing kind of circuit board design and manufacturing that was required. So have you done that research to see if those partners exist yet, or is that coming up in your business planning?
Okay, thank you for that question. So we've done some research and we found some partners. So for example, General Electric Garage, GE Garage in Nigeria. So they do 3D printing and fabrication. So we are hoping to get our products casing from them. Then for the PCBs, we got a PCB designing company, but the cost of their PCBs are very expensive. So we opted for the one in China, which is JL PCBs. So we're getting the circuit boards in China, but the rest of the components are going to be sourced locally.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
Great presentation, guys. I enjoyed the live demo. I have a question on the financials. So you say the production unit cost is 180 and you make $50. Is that gross or is that net profit?
Actually, the 230 is the product price on the market. So the gross profit is the $50 per unit.
So what is the net profit after you pay, salaries to the team and all the other operating costs? What is the net profit per piece?
Actually, we're not very sure of the exact figure because there are issues like maintenance. We are not sure when it will happen, especially in the 6 months because we do it. But looking at the costs that we are to incur, when it comes to maybe salaries, they are incorporated in the production cost. So the only part that is not in the 50 is the maintenance cost and the taxes. So which cannot also go up to $10. So I don't think that the net profit will go below $40.
Okay. Have you considered more of a pay-as-you-go model, kind of like in the software business? It would be like a software as a service model where your customers are paying you on a monthly basis. So that might not force them to put up the 230 right up front, even though they can afford it. But then you have a revenue stream in perpetuity as opposed to the one-time $50 or $40 profit. Would that be a model that would work in your market?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Actually, from experience with agricultural businesses in Africa, actual agricultural and energy businesses in Africa, the pay-as-you-go model has worked perfectly. But the challenge comes in maybe in trusting the people. That's why in the beginning we are saying we have to partner with their farmers cooperatives, so that in case we are to go the pay-as-you-go business model, the farmers cooperatives stand security for their members.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Okay, just to add to what he said. So we are also looking to other payment plans. So for the large scale farmers, which we plan to provide predictive analysis on graphs and maps. So we plan to collect a token of maybe about $10 per month for the data they will be streaming up the platform. And we also provide maintenance to those farmers by servicing the system. If they have any issue, they call us. So we are giving them 24/7 support. So we're also going to be charging for that. So we're not just working on a one-time payment.
Is there any value in the data you might collect from all of these farms once you get to scale?
Yes, there's value in the data. So from the data, the farmers are going to be able to know what type of plants is going to plant at this particular period, what plants, the time growth, the expected time the crops are going to be fully matured. So from that, he's going to be able to plan his own supply chain in order to provide fresh foods to the markets. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, I guess just one more. I haven't heard Carolyn cut us off yet. So one more question from me is just, have you thought about partnerships with the pay-as-you-go energy companies? Because I know that they have credit scores on customers. They have payment kind of procedures set up with them. And a lot of them are looking for ways to increase their clients' revenue, which this product clearly does. Have you explored partnerships with the existing pay-as-you-go companies?
Basically, we had not looked at that, and thank you for that. We shall have to look into it.
I think they could be a very good partner for you all because you bring a lot of value to them, and they have millions of customers across Africa. So it might be something to explore.
We definitely still have time for one more question.
Yeah, maybe I also just have a last one. I mean, I understand why you focus on the farmers. I was just wondering if there is not also the potential to go for the drinking water use, because also there is, of course, a high potential loss of water, and then again, cost case, etc. So have you looked into that area as well?
Actually, there's during this period, there's a problem that I identified, which is most apartments or houses here in Kenya, they own tanks which store water because there's usually water shortages. So these pumps are connected to water pumps, but the problem was the water keeps on pumping into the tank and it doesn't stop. So you can have it overflowing throughout the night. So with this, my team and I looked at how we can also expand our product into just having water sensors that will be implanted into the tanks, and these will be able to send a warning message depending on the water level. So if the water level is low, it will be able to alert the user that your water level is low. So then the user could be able to switch on the water pump. And if the water is overflowing, the user will be able to switch it off. And since with our platform, we have an advantage, which the user can be able to control remotely through with the use of their device. So you can have a scenario where the user is at work and your water is overflowing at home. So you can simply control that by the use of your phone. But I think, sorry, to what you've mentioned, we definitely have to look in that as it will help us expand even into more other markets. Thank you very much.
Maybe also to add on, with the abilities of leakage detection, we are also hoping to market our product to municipalities because they face a lot of leakages. I mean, a lot of losses due to leakages. So they are one of also our targets.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. With that, we conclude our 4 finals presentations. And I know I was super impressed, and I'm sure everyone here is. That was really, really inspiring. So thank you to everyone. I'd love to pass it over to Vandana for some closing remarks.
Wow, thank you, Carolyn. That was an action-packed session. So please join me, everyone, in giving our contestants a resounding remote round of applause. So I'll clap on behalf of everyone who's muted and on the live stream. It's been amazing to see the progress that your teams have made from your initial proposals to the final presentations today. You've come a long way, and we're excited to continue to support you on your entrepreneurial journey. I wanted to take a few minutes to say a few heartfelt thank yous to the folks who have made Fishbowl Challenge possible. Firstly, our mentors. You generously stepped in to guide the teams from day one, and I know so many teams have told me that your guidance, expertise, and support will enable them and empower them far beyond their fishbowl days. I know many of you are on the live stream right now. You are a key pillar of this program, and I hope that all of you will come back for our second year. To our challengers and all the 400 applicants who applied for this very first challenge, simply, you are the reason why Fishbowl Challenge exists. Your passion and energy have been an inspiration to us, and we're excited to see this next generation of social entrepreneurs make a meaningful impact in the world. And we are excited to continue enabling your incredible stories. To our judges, thank you. Anya, Duran, Lindsay, and Ralph, you've taken most of your Saturday and spent it with us. You haven't even had your lunch or dinner breaks yet. We promise you a break shortly. And most importantly, you've made this a really engaging event. Your feedback will continue to help the teams, not just today, but through their entire startup journey. So a big heartfelt thank you to you, especially because each of you stepped in and agreed to do this with literally one conversation. I'd also like to thank all our Fishbowl supporters, friends, and family who are on the live stream. We hope you enjoyed the event as much as we did, and we hope you'll continue to stay connected with us. And finally, I wanted to thank the Rockstar team at the Fishbowl Mission. You come together week after week, bringing new ideas, bringing new energy, and tirelessly delivering on this. Arike, Karma, Carolyn, Debbie, Enu, Mubarak, and Tom, I can't wait to do another year of Fishbowl Challenge with you. As most of you know, the Fishbowl Challenge is a nonprofit organization, and it's totally volunteer run. Every single dollar that we raise and contribute goes directly towards the students and enabling their social impact. So I'd be amiss if I did not make a pitch and say, please consider making a contribution. You've committed your time. We hope that you'll follow this up with a financial commitment as well, or give us leads to folks who you think may be interested in supporting the Fishbowl in the years to come. And another plug is that we don't stop at the Fishbowl Challenge. Our momentum keeps going. We're winding up our first year today, and we'll announce winners tomorrow. But we will on Monday kick off the second year of Fishbowl Challenge. And this year we're going to go truly global. We're inviting students from every continent, and we can't wait to meet our next group of change agents. So if you know amazing college students in your life, tell them to apply, and we can't wait to hear from them. So on that note, I will hand it back to Carolyn. Once again, a heartfelt thank you, and we can't wait. This journey, I know, is just getting started for the teams that presented today, but alongside them, it's just getting started for us as well at the Fishbowl. So thank you for being here for us. Back to you, Carolyn.
Thanks, Vandana, and thanks to everyone, judges and competitors, folks on the live stream, previous contestants. Okay, so that's the end of our live stream part of the event. So I'm going to tell you what's going to happen next. So in a minute, we're going to disconnect the YouTube live stream, and we are going to have breakouts where the judges will meet individually with teams to talk through any open questions they have, provide feedback, etc., before they enter calibration. So why don't we go ahead and end the live stream now, and then